A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no coal. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
Hello, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator Adam Keller, and we are broadcasting live online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio studio in Huntsville, Alabama. Today, Joe Biden is raising wages for construction workers. Texas bosses are stealing billions from workers and getting away with it, and the Republican presidential candidates want to make that easier on them. All that and more on today's program. If you want to be part of the show today, we have a phone number. The line is not open, but you can send us a text message at 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also send us a text or leave us a voicemail throughout the week, and we might respond on the next show. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular on our website, TVLR.fm. You're going to want to bookmark that and sign up for our newsletter so we can alert you whenever we have new stuff come out. Obviously, we are on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, all at the Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, folks, your support keeps us on the air. We could not do it without our financial supporters, in particular our listener donors, the people that donate $1, $2, $3, $4, $5, $20 a month individually. That pot of money is the largest single source of money that we have coming into the program. So it really helps the show out. If you can become a monthly donor, then please do consider it. You can do that at tvlr.fm/donate. You can make a one-time donation there, or set up a monthly auto-recurring payment. tvlr.fm/donate. Also, if you want to buy some of our merch, tvlr.fm/store. Pre-orders have closed on our new Join a Union shirt, but we did order a few extras, so you can go and order one of those. And you can also become a patron, patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. And if you are a member of a union, then please do consider getting your local or your international, your council, whatever, to sponsor the show as well. We could not do it without our union donors, even though our largest single source of revenue is from our individual donors. The majority of our revenue comes from our union sponsors. So very important that we have support from the labor unions. And if you are a member of a labor union, then please consider getting your local to sponsor the show.
Absolutely, absolutely. And let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. We welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, Unclaimed Mysteries Internet Radio, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, or through your favorite podcast app. We are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out. And as most of you know, we are not media professionals, just a few diehard unionists who believe that Alabama and the South's labor movement and working class deserve a bigger platform. We're hoping this project can make a difference on that front, and we could not do it without you. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in, whether you're a loyal fan, and we see some of y'all out there already in the chat, or if you're a first-time listener. We appreciate you spending some time with us this morning.
So let's talk about what happened in the U.S. South in the labor movement last week. We had several new election filings. First up, 1,722 PhD students providing instructional and research services at the private Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, filed for a union election with Workers United. They are also holding a rally on Monday, August 28th, from 10 to 11 a.m. on the quad outside the administration building to celebrate the filing of their union election and to prep their coworkers for what's next. So that's very exciting. A huge unit, and in the South. In what appears to be a raid of a unit of employees currently represented by the Office of Professional Employees International Union, OPEIU, 45 workers at Transdev in Lorton, Virginia, filed for a union election with the Independent Supervisors Union.
You might have to ask Chris about that later. He might have some insight.
That's true. 9 workers at Allegiance Crane and Equipment in Beaumont, Texas, filed for a union election with the International Union of Operating Engineers. 10 workers at Crescent Hotels and Resorts in Washington, D.C., filed for a union election with Unite Here, Local 25. 5 workers at Trident Military Services doing work on flight simulation projects at Lackland Air Force Base, Texas, filed for a union election with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers. 33 security guards at Allied Universal Security Services in Washington, D.C. filed for a union election with the Fraternity of American Protective Officers. 7 workers at Mid-America Conversion Services, LLC, in Keville, Kentucky, filed to be included in the existing bargaining unit that is represented by the United Steelworkers. 95 workers at Cisco in Louisville, Kentucky, filed for a union election with the General Drivers, Warehousemen, and Helpers, local union number 89, which is an affiliate of the Teamsters. 13 workers at PSA doing clerical work in Norfolk, Virginia, filed for a union election with the Teamsters Local 822. 50 workers for Ocean Point Terminal in Christiansted, in the Virgin Islands, filed for a union election with the United Steelworkers Local 8526. 300 workers at Coca-Cola Southwest Beverages in Fort Worth, Texas, filed for a union election with the Teamsters Local 997. 7 workers at T47 International in Abilene, Texas, filed for a union election with the Laborers International Union of North America Local 154. There were also a few election petition withdrawals at Blue Crew in New Orleans, Louisiana, Novo Health Services in Atlanta, Georgia, Bourbon Dog Inc. in Burlington, North Carolina, Route 66 in St. Louis, Missouri, Trident Military Systems in San Antonio, Texas, Hospital Damas in Ponce, Puerto Rico, and Hand and Stone Massage in Gainesville, Florida. Workers at all of those locations pulled their petition for a union election. Workers who were able to have their election last week almost ran a clean slate. There was one election loss, but every single other one was a win. That's very cool. 23 workers at a Starbucks in Washington, D.C. voted in favor of unionization, 13-9, with Starbucks Workers United. 83 workers at PepsiCo in Houston, Texas, voted in favor of unionization with the Teamsters Local 988, 52-25. 20 workers at Championship Enterprises in Fort Hood, Texas, voted against unionization with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, 8-12. 13 workers at Gladius in San Juan, Puerto Rico, voted unanimously in favor of unionization with the International Alliance of Theatrical and Stage Employees, Local 839. 8 workers at Brass Tacks Coffee in Jacksonville, Florida, voted in favor of unionization with Teamsters Local 947, 6-2. And finally, 17 workers at Swissport Fueling in Fort Myers, Florida, voted in favor of unionization with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, 16-1. There's a lot of strikes and bargaining updates this week. A committee of the State Employee Insurance Board in Alabama last week proposed a combination of increases in state employees' health care premiums and a decrease in benefits.
Yikes.
Love that. That's super great because everybody knows that Alabama state employees are just raking it in. That's what I'm told. Obviously not true. UAW members at the Big Three automakers have authorized a strike by a whopping 97%. The contracts expire at the Big Three automakers on the 14th of September, and the UAW has said that is a deadline, not a reference point. Teamsters at UPS overwhelmingly ratified their tentative agreement with UPS. More people voted in the referendum than have ever voted in a UPS contract referendum, and the percentage in favor was higher than ever in a UPS contract referendum. So genuinely overwhelming support from Teamsters at UPS. Teamsters at UPS will immediately get a raise of at least $2.75 an hour, a minimum wage of $21 an hour, and full-time package car drivers will see their wage rise to $49 an hour by 2028, and they will additionally not be able to be forced by management to work a sixth day in a week. The collective bargaining agreement between members of the Communication Workers of America in West Virginia and Ashburn, Virginia, and their employer, Frontier Communications, expired on at 11:59 p.m. on August the 19th. But the 1,400 members of the Communication Workers of America have agreed to continue to report to work and maintain the status quo as they continue negotiations on a new agreement. Workers have authorized the bargaining committee to call a strike if necessary. In politics and legislation, longtime listeners of the show will remember our discussions about the resurrection of the Joy Silk Doctrine at the National Labor Relations Board. And last week, we saw something quite close to it and something that will, in practice, be, I think, almost identical. In a decision on the CMEX case, the National Labor Relations Board put forward a new standard for certification of union representation. Going forward, the board has stated that if an employer commits any unfair labor practices over the course of a union election, and workers had already shown that a majority of employees support a union through union authorization cards, then the employee will automatically certify the union and order the employer to bargain.
Wow.
So that is huge news and is going to be a huge disincentive on employers with respect to their lawlessness during union elections. The new CMEX standard, however, is not the only change in union election procedures that the NLRB put forward last week. A new rule was issued aimed at expediting union elections to decrease the time available to employers to interfere with their workers' rights to organize. Changes include allowing pre-election hearings to begin more quickly, ensuring that important election information is disseminated to employees more quickly, making pre- and post-election hearings more efficient, and ensuring that elections are held more quickly. So two very big pieces of news coming out from the board this week that will both be very helpful to employees who are seeking to form a union. The American Federation of Government Employees has endorsed Joe Biden's nominee to head up the Social Security Administration, Martin O'Malley. Now, there's a name that I have not heard in a long time.
Interesting throwback.
Yes. Last week's guest, Rich Kuchar, who is president of the American Federation of Government Employees Council 215, which represents part of their members at the Social Security Administration, said in a statement, quote, SSA deserves a leader with full authority to implement a positive vision that will simultaneously improve public service and employee working conditions. Governor O'Malley is that leader. So here's hoping that Brother Kuchar is right. From the American Prospect, over the past 2 years, Georgia has been the beneficiary of 22 clean energy projects and almost 17,000 clean tech jobs, which is the second highest totals for both of any state in the country. There's only one other state that has more clean energy projects and more jobs from the federal subsidies in the clean energy industry. Governor Kemp's administration secured economic development deals with these companies that award lucrative contracts for building out the factories to non-union construction firms. The selected companies are also donors to Republicans in the state, including the governor, who is himself the former owner of a non-union construction firm. No union contractor has benefited from any of these federally subsidized projects, despite Biden's assurances that these subsidies would fund good-paying union jobs. So that's a big, big issue there. We're going to be diving into that a little bit more deeply in the coming weeks, but you should really check out the article in The American Prospect from Luke Goldstein, I believe is his name. If we missed anything, then let us know. Send us a message at tvlr.fm/contact about your Southern labor updates, and we will be sure to include it in the next segment. With that, we're going to go ahead and go to a break. We're going to be right back with a couple of brothers from the building trades unions to talk about the updated enforcement to the Davis-Bacon Act, which is an absolutely riveting topic of conversation, I'm sure you'll think. But the upshot is actually very interesting, and that is that construction workers are going to be paid more. So we're going to be diving into that here in just a couple of minutes. We'll be right back.
In Alabama, more than 200,000 of our friends and family members are living without health care coverage. Often folks can't stay healthy enough even to keep their jobs. We can fix this. It's time for us to find a way to close the health care coverage gap so that people can remain at work. Let's make this a priority. Let's close this gap and cover Alabama. To learn more and how you can help, visit coveralabama.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Attention union members, membership organizations, podcasters, or anyone with a payment processing need. The future is here, and your organization needs to be prepared by working with Unionly. With Unionly, your union or organization can take payments on a mobile device, eliminating processing fees, giving you a better price than other payment processing methods, while at the same time supporting a union-friendly business with a specialized skill set to meet your needs. Your members will thank you when they pay their dues at their convenience without waiting in line to deposit cash or check. Start preparing for the future today by calling 206-595-8631 or visiting unionly.io.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
I'm attorney Tommy Sinyard. When you've been injured and need help, you need a lawyer who's with you.
Sinyard Law.
You need attorneys always available to take care of you.
Sinyard Law.
And keep you in the loop. It's your case. You need to know what's happening.
Sinyard Law.
And never a charge to meet with us to evaluate your case.
Sinyard Law.
A new firm, but an old name. One that will stay with you every step of the way.
Sinyard Law, the name with proven results.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth should go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host Adam Keller, and we have a great segment lined up for you, but first I wanted to mention that Susan Kang is a professor of political science at John Jay College /CUNY, and she is interviewing Southern workers in all industries, but in the private sector, who have participated in union organizing, particularly filing NLRB elections or voluntary recognition in the past 5 years. Interviews take 1 hour, are anonymous, and subjects will be compensated $25 for their time. If you qualify and are interested, then reach out to her. Her email is skang@jjay.cuny.edu. That is skang@jjay.cuny.edu. All right.
Also hit us up if you didn't catch that for any reason. Just hit us up and we'll be happy to connect you.
Yeah, feel free to holler at us. So we're going to get right into what we're talking about today. That is updates on the enforcement of the Davis-Bacon Act. That is a, when you put it like that, it doesn't sound super sexy, but it is actually really sexy because the upshot, like I said earlier, is that construction workers are going to make higher wages on federal construction sites. That's very important.
Absolutely.
And we're really excited about that. We were really excited when this rule change was announced. And so we have wanted for a couple of weeks to get on some folks from the Building Trades Union, and we have that this morning. We have Steve Stutz, who is former president of the local Union of Operating Engineers over in Muscle Shoals. He is also former international representative for the union, and I believe is currently the president of the Shoals Democrats. Is that right? Steve? I don't know if he can hear me. Our other guest that we have, though, is Sean Paul Kimball. He is the president and business manager for the Iron Workers Local 704 in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and is president of the Building Trades Council in the area. Sean Paul, really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you for having me on. It's an honor.
Absolutely. And Steve, are you there now?
I don't know. I think Steve's connection may be bad. Not sure what's going on there.
Okay. Well, let's start off with talking about while we wait for Steve to connect. Sean, you have had issues with Davis-Bacon in the past, and so can you just talk to us about the Davis-Bacon Act? What is it like? What does it do on federal construction sites that makes it, that makes it such an important piece of legislation to unions like yours in the building trades?
Well, thank you. The Davis-Bacon Act was enacted in 1931 by, oddly enough, 2 Republicans. It was U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania, James John Davis, and a U.S. Rep from New York, Robert Bacon. And I think it was Senator Davis had a job in his district where they brought up a large amount of African Americans to a project in Pennsylvania. I think it might have been at a U.S. steel mill, and they were working these people 14 hours a day, paying substandard wages, and it was just awful. So he said, there should be area standards on federally funded public projects, and it should be the prevailing rate of that area. So, oddly enough, living wage in 1931, let's fast forward, it worked great. The greatest generation, union density was at its all-time high. A family could work 40 hours a week and not worry about losing their house, or, didn't have to work 3 jobs. Wages weren't suppressed. 1980, Reagan comes along and he takes a lot of, things out of it. And now we're looking at a labor shortage right now because, for years, contractors on the non-union side mostly have suppressed wages so bad that, in right to work states like we're in Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, the wages are suppressed so bad you cannot get young people to go into a trade. So, federally, and it just makes sense. These are tax dollars. These are not private funds. These are not, Amazon didn't decide to throw a bunch of money in. Elon Musk is not funding this. These are federal dollars. So, it's what's wrong with paying the workers a living wage with benefits, and what this is going to do is this is going to bring it up. It's an 800-page document. So prevailing wage has always been, the lifeblood, not only for union, but non-union workers. It should level the playing field. And for this craft, you get this wage.
Right. And so, one of the issues that you told me about in the last, 40 years, right? There was an enforcement regime of the Davis-Bacon Act from 1930 to kind of 1980. And then basically, like everything else in American society, it went wrong in 1980. And we'll leave it to the listeners to figure out what exactly happened in 1980. But it went wrong in 1980, and they began calculating prevailing wage differently in 1980. And the upshot of that is that it lowered construction workers' wages. How have they been calculating prevailing wage for the last 40 years?
Well, since 1980, they used a formula where you had to have at least 50% of the workers in the area surveyed had to make this certain wage. Well, now they've reversed that and brought it back down to 30%. 50% is hard to achieve in right to work states where, there's a super majority. Like you said, we'll let the listeners figure that out. But I mean, it's so they've reversed that back to 30%. And I'm not going to get off in the weeds too much with that, but that will help in itself. Another thing they did is there's misclassification is so rampant, and it's just like any law that is enacted, enforcement of that law, So now it's my understanding and what I've read and the industry experts that I've talked to, there's going to be the general contractor is going to be held more liable. So let's say contractor A goes out there and hires a bunch of laborers to perform, whether it's ironwork, pipe fitting, operator, whatever, and pays those lower wages, instead of paying them the classification that they should be at. So there's going to be more enforcement, and it's going to raise, both rural areas and in the city, like, in the city of Chattanooga, Chickamauga Lock, they had to do what's called a rehabilitation program on that. So we have not prevailed in the heavy, in Davis-Bacon for years. So first thing that the contractor does is come in and hit us with a concession because, there was no. So even though we signed a project labor agreement on that job, we still had to take a concession on wages in order to get that job because that job didn't hit the magic, window where it's surveyed and everything.
And and one of the ways, additionally, you mentioned that 50% threshold, and now it's down to 30%, which is going to benefit the workers, right? If you only have to have 30% of the people making a wage this high, and then that's the floor for federal construction projects, as opposed to 50%, right? You can imagine how how that's going to increase wages on federal construction sites. But you also said something about a survey every 7 years, and how if you didn't have workers in the year that they happened to do that survey, then your prevailing wage could actually go down to not applicable, and it would be the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour.
Right. And I think you're exactly right. And I think they changed that in 2022. I think it's $16. I'm not sure, but you're exactly right. And, there's a lot of things got to line up, for the one, there has to be a project in either heavy highway construction or building. And then you have to have contractors, one putting in for the survey for those projects. And there's a lot to do. And when you send the survey in, if a contractor sends it in, then it's pretty much gold. Nobody questions it. But if a local union sends it in, which we do on behalf of our contractors, I personally, when a survey comes up in our jurisdiction, whether it's in the Chattanooga area, Northeast Alabama, or Northwest Georgia, which is our jurisdiction, I sit down, I get with the contractors and find out who was working on that. And they always call the contractors. They don't always take our word for it. But with those surveys in there, whether union or non-union, you should be making a living wage. And,
right. Absolutely. And that's the thing about, you mentioned that about when it's public dollars, we should be investing in public benefits, and it is beneficial to the public for the people building our infrastructure to not be in poverty.
Right.
I mean,
yeah,
just for the moral thing of it, obviously, if we're spending money on it as a government, then, we should be putting our values into that. And that's really kind of even outside of any other economic calculations for me anyway. And I know that I'm not, that's not necessarily everybody's cup of tea, but when we're spending money as a government, we really should be injecting our values into it and setting the floor for the private sector. But even outside of that, maybe you don't care about, workers not being in poverty. Like maybe that's not something you care about. It's beneficial for the community when these workers have spending money. Right. It's beneficial for local restaurants, mom and pop, entertainment things, local grocery stores. Because the value is going to be created one way or another. Right? That's the thing that people need to understand, is that these workers are going to create this value, and the only question is it going to go into the community via these workers, or is it going to be suctioned out and go into the bank account of some wealthy person, wealthy executive in New York or D.C., right? That's the question.
Right. The ones that benefit when the interest rate goes to 8% and the workers are trying to buy a car or a house or anything. Mm-hmm. You're exactly right. You could not, and I've jotted me down a note to talk about that. That's a perfect segue in the Chattanooga area building trades with Volkswagen came to Chattanooga. We were trying to get a local hire ordinance in the city of Chattanooga, much like, Davis-Bacon, that, if any work's provided or performed by, Chattanooga area tax dollars, then, there ought to be Chattanooga area workers working on that. So we hired an economist from UTC, University of Tennessee in Chattanooga, the Chattanooga area building trades, did do a study on if a local resident worker, now we're talking local resident, I think it was 45 to 50 miles from downtown Chattanooga, because Chattanooga borders Alabama and Georgia too. But, a local resident of Chattanooga proper earns $1. That dollar turns over 7 times in just what you were talking about, the mom and pop. I mean, I live in about as rural Northwest Georgia as you can get, 30 minutes from Chattanooga. And if my sons want to go to Dick's Sporting Goods, or my wife wants to go to Ulta, we go to Chattanooga. We love it here, but we don't mind commuting. So we spend a lot of our tax base in Chattanooga. If a non-resident of Chattanooga comes in for a project, that dollar just turns over 1.5 times. So, I mean, it just makes sense. Back to what, Senator Davis said, and that's what he was worried about was, workers coming in from out of the area making substandard wages. And I mean, I could go on and on about the horror stories about Volkswagen and, them just the treatment of the non-union workers out there. But we'll say that for another day. But you're exactly right. I mean, it's not like this is privately funded. This is public tax dollars. And, if the Republicans, Democrats, Independent, they're going to sit here and say, we're physically conservative. Well, be physically conservative with spending federal tax dollars and putting it in the workers' pockets where they can go out and they can live like middle class people used to live. I mean, I get pretty fired up about this because 30 years. I'll have 30 years of trade next year, and it's my passion to get more people in the trades and watch them retire with dignity. I mean, when you're talking to a young person in the apprenticeship, and I did this. I asked him. I said, "What's your dream? Where do you see yourself in 20 years?" And that young man looked me in the face and he said, "I just want my own piece of grass to mow." And I never had to experience that because my mom was a teacher in the state of Alabama, had a great teacher's retirement. And, I think she was in 3 unions, the AEA, the NEA, then the one for the principals, administrators, then my dad. I'm a 3rd generation union iron worker. So, I was fortunate to grow up in a middle class household. But, why shouldn't that individual have the right to a living wage if he's willing to work for it? I mean, we're not giving anything away. We're just like you said, we want to put a little bit in the pocket of the people who's building it. There's fixing to be a whole generation, and it's going to be the generation of infrastructure because we've waited so long to let our power grid, the demand for power and everything has waited so long. So now, we have to build an extreme amount. So it's going to be a generation of infrastructure. So it's going to be, this change is one of the biggest change. And, I think prevailing wage is the single best way for economic development. It levels the playing field.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to just chime in and say that exact same thing that, politicians like to talk about economic development and, they have their own definitions of that. But there's a way to do economic development from the bottom up that actually supports the working people who are doing the vital work in our community that we all depend on. And so I really appreciate that. And, shout out to the building trades unions for advocating for your members and fighting for your members and fighting on this issue and the persistence on this issue because not every worker has folks out there fighting for them, as you talked about with the non-union contractors and the way those folks are treated. So, just shout out to the building trades for all your work on this issue. And I so agree. This is a economic development tool that we should be using from not just the federal level, but to the local and the state level too. And so really appreciate your work on the local hire, and fighting for that in Chattanooga. And I think, again, that's something that communities across the state of Alabama can learn from as well.
And, it's also in addition to everything else that we've mentioned, when you've got the trade unions on there, the union contractors on these construction projects as opposed to non-union contractors who underpay their workers, have unsafe working conditions, and who don't train them as much, right? I mean, this is something that the ABC, the Associated Builders and Contractors, the big non-union construction lobby, that they want to do. They want to eliminate the skilled tradesmen. They want to train their employees to the job. To only be able to do a job. And then that takes away some of their power. Whereas the building trades unions, each one of those has the equivalent of a college degree, that amount of education, 3 to 5 years, depending on the union. Hundreds of hours of classroom education, tests, studying, on-the-job training, and free of charge to the apprentice. Generally speaking, a couple of them you have to pay for your books. Free of charge to the apprentice. Free of charge to the government. The government doesn't fund any of these trade union apprenticeship programs. It all comes from the unions. And so that's another thing, that when you have these really skilled tradesmen who have gone through a college degree worth of education about how to be an iron worker, how to be an operating engineer, that's going to, the quality of your project is going to be different. And that is actually why Toyota Mazda has a project labor agreement for the factory that they're building right here in Huntsville. They have a project labor agreement with the trade unions because even though they don't want unions in their factories, they know that the trade unions are going to give them a better product. And they signed a project labor agreement despite our governor traveling to Japan to try to convince their executives not to sign a project labor agreement. Really, really wild stuff. But Steve, I wanted to see if Brother Stutz, if you are if you've gotten everything worked out with your audio, and if you have anything to say about what we've been talking about so far. I'm not sure what's going on. Is he muted?
Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. I think we've just had a connection issue going on. I know he did rejoin, so we'll see. Maybe that will help.
Okay. Yeah. Well.
So yeah, just let us know, Steve, when you're there.
Yeah. Feel free to just go ahead and
jump in.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know, Sean, Paul, if you had anything else on what I was talking about there, about the quality.
Yeah, I do. The apprenticeship is something that's near and dear to my heart. Everybody doesn't come in through the apprenticeship. We have a probationary program that used to be the old permit program. It doesn't matter how you get to us at the Iron Workers. When you get here, we want you to retire here. We don't want you to work one project. But to your point about the apprenticeships, I was talking to a senator. Tennessee AFL has labor on the Hill, and then they invite all the senators and House reps to come over. So I was, the gentleman was walking to me, and he's a Republican. I thought, but try to have an open mind. So we were talking, and I explained to him that the apprenticeships you were referencing are paid for by our members. He said, "Oh, y'all get grants." I said, No, we don't get any grants. You and your buddies cut all that out. I said, we're funded, and the smaller local you are, the more you have to put in. And that's, money our members put in to train. And we have to train to the industry standards, or, our contractors aren't going to be with us. So he said that's something he's going to take back to the chamber and the ABC and the, AGC and tell them, you always gripe about how much more they cost. He says, but they train their own members. There is no. So again, back to, the phrase they like is being physically conservative. If we're paying for our own, and I told him the horror stories about going in behind contractors at Volkswagen, which, out of $1 billion, I think taxes were $800 million to build Volkswagen. So we had to do work twice. So they would give the bid out, lowest and most responsible. It's always lowest, never the most responsible bid. And then, fast forward, one of our signatory contractors goes in there and redoes the work. So there's no value in the race to the bottom on the lowest bid.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really important too. The fact that, these mistakes happen and these issues come up and you have the safety problems. And so sometimes you get what you pay for when you're just strictly looking at the lowest bidder. And, that's why responsible bidder ordinances are important, and project labor agreements. And, so this is, I've appreciated this conversation because, like you said at the beginning, Jacob, I know, you may just glance at the headline of, improvements to the Davis-Bacon Act. You're like, what the hell does that mean? But the idea of working people in your community being treated better and paid better is really something that uplifts the entire community. So, that's huge, and I think we just got to keep fighting for it, at every level and in every community, and it's an opportunity for labor to work together with each other, right? All the building trades working together, and other unions working with the building trades and with the community. We all come together to support this because it's a no-brainer kind of policy. If we can help people, if we can help the people who are helping us, that's what we need to do. So, I really appreciate it.
Sorry, I didn't know if Sean Paul was going to start. We'll try. We'll go to Steve one more time. See if he is Steve still in the Zoom.
Steve is not in the Zoom. No.
Man.
No. So hate that. We'll have to follow up with Steve and see if we can get him back on next week or something.
Yeah, he. Like I said, he was the president of the local building trades union and of the local. Union of Operating Engineers, and he told me that he's got a bunch of stories about Davis-Bacon enforcement on Redstone Arsenal.
Oh wow!
And how it's been so difficult to get a good prevailing wage, even on Redstone Arsenal. And
isn't that a shame?
Yeah.
I mean, such a huge piece of the economy here in North Alabama, and again, the public's purchasing power should be used to uplift the public.
Yeah,
it seems so basic, and it should be basic, and I personally have been very critical of the Biden administration on a lot of issues, including labor issues, and there's a lot of areas where I have disagreement, and Jacob and we can talk about that, as we do nearly every week, but this is a big issue, and this is big for the building trades, and so. Again, I think the building trades have done a great job advocating for their members, and it's good to see this win. And like I said, let's keep this momentum going into the local and state level and see how we can broaden the impact.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, we secured a project labor agreement with NAS Construction at over there at Air Force Base in Tullahoma, Tennessee, and now the Air Force has seen the fruits of our labor with that project labor agreement. So what we're doing is we have redone that contract to allow NAS to go out and bid even more work within that Air Force base with all the money coming from the federal government for, military spending and everything, as well as TVA. I mean, the TVA Act's been using building construction trades, and it works. I mean, it's the gold standard, and, safety and, no return to service issues or a bare minimum, and so it works. It's just, do you want to put money in the pocket of the workers to help stimulate the economy, or do you want to put it in the pockets of the contractors so, they can put it up there in their funds that we don't know what's going on with, just like you said, Jacob.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Well, Sean Paul Kimball, President Business Manager of the Iron Workers Local 704 in Chattanooga, President of the Building Trades Council over there. Really appreciate you taking the time with us this morning. Is there anything else that you wanted to say signing off?
There is. There's one quote, and it's one of my favorite quotes ever. And he was a Martin, I cannot pronounce his name, Niemoller. He was a Lutheran pastor. He immigrated from Germany, and his quote is, "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came out for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." And that was Martin Niemoller, I believe it was his name. But that's one of my favorite quotes, especially as I get older. I appreciate you, y'all bringing this to light. I mean, we have to tell the story of all workers, and it's just, whether you're in a union or not a union, I will tell you this much, united we bargain, divided we beg. And, that's just the quote that's out there. And I appreciate y'all having this platform. I encourage everybody to support this because, we're not lying here. We're not, telling anything that's not true. I mean, if you don't believe workers to live, deserve a livable wage, then, I can't talk to you much more about anything past that. So
really pretty fundamental
I appreciate y'all
disagreement.
having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And before you go, I wanted to you mentioned quote. I love that's one of my favorite quotes as well. Right. And it's worth quoting the first part of it, like you did. A lot of people don't quote the first part, but it's worth it's worth knowing how it starts actually. But speaking of quotes, the ABC, which you're a big fan of the ABC, I'm sure, the Associated Builders and Contractors. When this came out, they released a press release, and one of their quotes was, "This is yet another Biden administration handout to organized labor on the backs of taxpayers, small businesses, and the free market."
Yeah,
That's just gross.
That's ridiculous. Now that's their national, but I've talked to a lot of different people, mostly north of the Mason-Dixon line, where that's not right to work, and the ABC. Sometimes our contractors and our business agents and managers and people from international go to these meetings, and they've told me that the ABC has had admitted that they have suppressed wages on federal projects so long that now they can't find anybody to work the projects. I mean, there's a craftsperson shortage all over the country right now. So, they say that on the national level, but, you dive into the weeds, they're hurting too. Their contractors are trying to find people too. But yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of them.
All right, brother. Well, hey, we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. It was great.
Yes, sir. Appreciate
Hey, thank y'all, brothers. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that was great. I always enjoy talking to the building trades and hearing about their issues. And, again, the public purchasing power to me is one of those pieces of leverage where we as community members, we as labor union members, we as working people,
I was on there the whole Stevie Stutz didn't get on there, Smoke.
We can really get together as, as a broader community and lift people's wages. And it's not a handout by any means. It's, where do you want the money to go? I want it to go to the working people and see where that goes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's totally right. So we're going to go ahead and head into a break, and we're going to be right back with Boss Watch, one of my favorite segments that we do.
We got to keep an eye on them.
We got to keep an eye on what the bosses are doing here in the South. And folks, like every week, they are up to no good. So we'll fill you in on the other side. Stay tuned.
In Alabama, more than 200,000 of our friends and neighbors are living without health care coverage. Often folks can't stay healthy enough to keep their jobs. We need to fix this. Let's close the health care coverage gap. To learn more, visit coveralabama.org.
Support for this program also comes from the Iron Workers, Local 477. So if you are looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, they tell me that if you need to know what those mean, then you will. Or if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, short or long term, if you need iron workers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer, and you're looking to start work on a project, or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Iron Workers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs, from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Iron Workers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334 or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
The Laborers International Union of North America, Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact Donna at their training center to start the process. That phone number is 256-415-7452. Again, that phone number is 256-415-7452. No experience is needed. Free training is offered, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is their mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
I'm Attorney Tommy Sinyard. When you've been injured and need help, you need a lawyer who's with you.
Sinyard Law.
You need attorneys always available to take care of you.
Sinyard Law.
And keep you in the loop. It's your case. You need to know what's happening.
Sinyard Law.
And never a charge to meet with us to evaluate your case.
Sinyard Law.
A new firm, but an old name. One that will stay with you every step of the way.
Sinyard Law. The name with proven results.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Alabama's only union talk radio show. This is the Valley Labor Report, folks. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We bring you Alabama's only union talk radio program every week, Saturday mornings, 9:30 a.m. Central Time. And folks, we enjoyed doing it, and we really appreciate everybody hanging out with us in the chat. We've got about 30 people watching us live right now on the YouTubes, but only 15 people have liked the stream. So those are rookie numbers, folks. We can get that up. If you have not subscribed to the channel yet, then consider doing that as well. We really appreciate everybody hanging out with us in the chat. We have a conversation, I think, just brought up just because we had Biden in the thumbnail about energy prices and stuff, and that Biden is the cause of all of the energy prices. And you know, here's a couple of facts to consider if you want to think about is it actually Joe Biden's fault that gas prices are higher. U.S. oil output is now projected to rise to an average of 12.8 million barrels per day this year for the first time ever. The first time ever. More than so the translation there is that more than Trump. That's 500,000 barrels per day more than the prior annual record set in 2019. It's also more oil than any other country on the planet produces. The next closest nation, Saudi Arabia, produces about 10 million barrels per day. So then the question is, okay, well, if Joe Biden hasn't been waging a war on the oil sector, then why is it that gas prices have been increasing? And well, at the beginning of the pandemic, once things started opening up, the OPEC countries and the Middle Eastern countries did not increase production similarly. And so that was really kind of the driver, especially when it got really high. And they're doing something similar right now, actually. Russia, and also, you know, not being able to use Russian oil because they have been sanctioned. But Russia, Saudi Arabia, and OPEC at large have held back barrels in a strategy aimed at boosting prices. Last week, Saudi Arabia vowed to extend its oil production cut for at least another month, right? Russia said it will also slash oil exports by 300,000 barrels per day in September. Also, you've obviously got the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and, you know, whatever you think about our military support for Ukraine, Joe Biden is not the one who invaded Russia. And whatever you think about our NATO policies, you know, ultimately that was a Russian issue, not Joe Biden. The issue was long before he entered the presidency. And, so look, those are some things that kind of complicate that narrative, but it's not something that I'm super interested in dying on. Let's see. Some other...
I wanted to mention before we go on to our next segment that we have a live show coming up And
yes,
we haven't mentioned that, I don't think, really on the air much, and we should probably talk about that.
Yeah.
We have a live show coming up on September 17th in Huntsville, right here in Huntsville, Alabama, at Shenanigans Comedy Theater. It's on Lehman Ferry Road. If you've never been there, it's great folks who run the Shenanigans Comedy Theater, and really looking forward to this live event. We had a local comedian in the studio a few weeks ago with us, Sci-Fi, and he is going to be joining us, and we're going to see, we have some other potential guests that are going to be there. We're definitely going to have guests from the movement with some stories to share, and so we'll have some activists and organizers from the community who will be joining us for, a live discussion of labor and organizing in the South. It's going to be, a fun night. You'll have some laughs. We'll have some solidarity and some fellowship. Beverages are served. Adult beverages will be served at the theater, so that's, a benefit for some people. It's going to be a Sunday evening. And, really would appreciate support. If you're in the area, if you are anywhere in North Alabama, Tennessee Valley, if you're close by, drive on out, see us. It'll be really cool, and I just hope to see some folks.
Yeah, definitely think about coming. You can go to tvlr.fm/store and buy a ticket. General admission is $20. VIP is $35. And VIP just gets you in an hour early. You get to, chit chat with us and the guests that we're gonna have on during the live show. It's gonna be a lot of fun. We've got a flyer that we're working on right now that we're gonna have printed and put up over the city.
That's very official.
Yeah,
just putting your phone up to the camera. That's
we're professionals.
Yes,
folks.
absolutely.
But seats are extremely limited. 40 seats, 40. So 3 dozen, so extremely limited seats. So if you do want to come, Shenanigans Comedy Theater off Lehman Ferry Road, you're going to want to go ahead and get your tickets now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Hope to see a lot of folks there. I think it's going to be a cool night. And the whole point, of course, is to raise some funds for the show and just to have some live outreach, in-person outreach, and talk to folks, because we know we do have some folks here in the Tennessee Valley who listen to the show and enjoy it. We know we have a strong labor movement here in the Tennessee Valley, and we have some really great community activists here in the Valley, and it's just, good opportunity to connect all those folks.
Yes. Austin in the chat says, y'all's sponsors are awesome AF, the first ads I've liked in years. And it is very, we're a talk radio show, right? And so, we kind of try to fit the mold as far as the medium goes, and so somebody said it was like one of those GTA stations, except with good politics. If you're playing Grand Theft Auto and you've stolen somebody's car and you have the radio on. So anyway.
I've definitely heard us compared to conservative radio, conservative talk radio, just with very different content, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the event. Appreciate all the support that we've received so far. Appreciate, anyone who can support us for doing that. I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. I promised you Boss Watch. We're going to do Boss Watch. We have an Alabama employer on the list this week, and so many companies stealing from their employees and putting them in illegally dangerous workplaces that we didn't even have room to include EEOC cases this week. It's a lot of stuff. Really bad. The bosses are wilding out on their employees in a not good way. So we'll start with Alabama. The Texas-based operator of an Eclectic, Alabama, I've never heard of that city, Eclectic, Alabama manufacturing facility could have prevented a 20-year-old worker from suffering an amputation if the employer had followed required federal safety standards, a U.S. Department of Labor investigation determined. After Maddox Incorporated reported a March 23, 2023 employee injury, investigators with the department's Occupational Safety and Health Administration determined that as the worker tried to adjust a coolant feed line on a tube saw, his glove became caught and his hand was pulled into the saw's spinning blade. The worker then suffered the amputation of 3 fingers. A manufacturer of retail shelving and displays, Maddox received citations for 2 repeat, 3 serious, and 3 other than serious violations and faces $158,000 in proposed penalties. OSHA's inspection specifically found that the company allowed employees to perform maintenance on an automatic tube saw without following lockout-tagout procedures. Folks, we've been doing this Boss Watch thing for like 3 or 4 weeks, a month now. Every week, we've got an employer not following lockout-tagout. That's every week. And it's always leading to amputations, leading to serious lacerations, leading to employees being killed. Lockout-tagout, so important. Got to do it. The employer also did not ensure employees had the knowledge and skills to safely apply, use, and remove energy controls on automatic tube cutters. It permitted employees to operate a press machine with an unguarded material carriage, which exposed them to pinch point hazards, failed to provide guards for a tube cutting saw's blades, leaving employees exposed to amputation hazards, did not repair a broken emergency stop button on the side control panel of an automatic saw. A broken emergency stop button. That's like an important thing to have on a dangerous piece of machinery. Since 2018, OSHA inspections at 2 Maddox Incorporated facilities in Alabama and 1 in Texas have identified 1 willful violation and 8 serious violations. The inspections included a 2019 OSHA investigation of an employee's amputation injury in Eclectic that found similar machine guarding and lockout-tagout failures for which OSHA cited the company for 3 serious violations. This company has already cost one of their workers limb, right? And they did it again for the same thing. It's wild. This is the kind of thing, once you start doing this kind of stuff, you've got somebody that amputated their fingers on the job because of your failure to create a safe working environment. Okay, let's even say that, it was an accident. Oh man, I'll do better, right? If you do it again in a matter of 3 or 4 years for the same reason, jail, right? That's the kind of thing that you ought to be talking about. Jail time for these people. But, look, bosses are better than us. That's how the law sets it up. Bosses are just a totally separate class of creature from their employees under the eyes of the law. And so
Especially here in Alabama.
And so instead of somebody facing jail time for mutilating a person multiple times for the same reason, they only have a fine of a couple $100,000 and they're going to be able to go about their merry way. It's wild. Okay, moving on. In Texas, a federal workplace safety investigation has found that a Farmersville construction contractor could have prevented the loss of a 23-year-old employee by following required safety procedures for operating a mobile crane at an Aubrey work site. Investigators with the U.S. Department of Labor's Occupational Safety and Health Administration learned that the worker and other employees of S&D Erectors Incorporated were constructing a metal building when the crane collapsed in March of 2023. The agency determined that the company exposed its employees to struck-by hazards by overloading the crane beyond its weight limitations. And listen to this. OSHA cited the company for 4 willful violations related to not using temporary alternative measures when the load and radius cell did not work, operating a mobile crane in excess of its rated capacity, and requiring the crane operator to operate the crane in a manner that exceeded its rated capacity. That's you're talking about like wicked stuff there,
Yeah, absolutely.
Like evil. OSHA also cited S&D erectors for 11 serious violations for its failure to create and employ an accident prevention program, perform frequent and regular inspections of the work sites, or meet federal safety standards for crane inspections, wire rope inspections, and other hazards. So the agency has proposed a whopping $262,000 in penalties for the loss of a life. The company has 15 business days from receipt of the citation and penalties to either comply, request an informal conference with OSHA's area director, or contest the findings. Finally, still in Texas, we got this tip last week, and I wanted to spend a little bit more time on it. From 2010 to 2020, the Texas Workforce Commission ordered employer thieves to give back $99 million. A Rutgers study found that only 20% of that has been recovered by the workers from whom it was stolen.
Wow. That, and that brings up something the brother who was with us this morning talked about in terms of enforcement. It's not just the law, but the enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Only 20%.
Yeah.
This is money these people were owed.
This is money that not only were they owed, right, but this is money that the government has found the employer guilty of stealing, right? I mean, this isn't even, they have studies, and we're going to get into this. There are also studies about, there is the question of how much is found to be stolen, but obviously we know that bosses steal more from workers than they report. And so there are attempts to find that number too. But this is just the number that the government has investigated and ordered the employer to pay back.
Right. So it's a very conservative estimate of wage theft, certainly. I'm thinking about even like grievances that I worked on where, we busted the employer and they acknowledged it, right? They acknowledged that they made a mistake, or, of course, that's all they would acknowledge. They're not going to acknowledge their intent behind it. But, where they were busted, but still would, slow walk trying to actually pay out the back pay that they had agreed to pay, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in this case, the idea that they've already been found guilty, so to speak, and it's already supposed to be happening, and you're that worker and you've already got your hopes up, right? You've won your case, and you still can't get your money back. Right. Oof. That is very frustrating.
Yeah. Wacky stuff. The Dallas Morning News told one worker's story. Oscar Torres has logged hours working at construction sites across Dallas-Fort Worth throughout the last 7 years. 6 times now, he has not been rightfully paid, he says, losing upwards of $5,000. He's tried to recover those unpaid wages, filing claims with the Texas Workforce Commission. Despite an order being ruled in his favor, signaling that his employer owed him money, he's never seen a nickel of it. Really wild stuff. The report also found that 3 million Texans have been paid less than the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. And that's just one form of wage theft, right? You've also got violations of Davis-Bacon on federal construction sites. You've also got violations of the overtime provisions of the Fair Labor Standards Act. You've also got, you've got other forms of wage theft, right? Stealing lunch breaks. Just in Texans being paid less than $7.25 an hour, 3 million. 3 million workers in Texas are victims of this. The report claims that the average worker, in Texas, loses $4,000 to wage theft every year, totaling $12 billion in losses to employer theft in the last 14 years. Here, again, Texas, just Texas, right? Not the rest of the country, just Texas. While the average wages ordered per claim continued to rise from $1,613 in 2010 to $2,249 in 2020 by the Texas Workforce Commission, the average amount paid during the same period declined from $435 to $406. To be fair, though, and just so that somebody doesn't go and research this and say that we didn't include this, the Texas Workforce Commission disputes the total number of unpaid claims. They say that no. It's not 80% of the orders are unpaid. It's only 40%.
Oh, okay.
Still not a good number. 40% of the orders that you have given out over the last 10 years, even if we just take them at face value and say that's true. I'm not inclined to believe the Texas state government over, Rutgers, right? But, let's say that's true. Okay? That is $50 million that is still owed to employees that bosses have stolen and that they haven't given back. Really wild stuff happening over there in the Lone Star State. So like I said, there were several other releases from the Department of Labor and OSHA and the Wage and Hour Division, so we're going to get through those in a rapid-fire manner in dishonorable mentions. Dollar Tree made an agreement with OSHA to conduct a nationwide safety assessment and fix issues or face a fine of $100,000 per day of violation, up to $500,000. They also agreed to pay $1.35 million in penalties and fines. OSHA has issued 403 violations at Dollar Tree and Family Dollar stores since 2017, resulting in more than $13.1 million in fines to date. Last time we talked to Dollar General, I reminded people, you hear $13 million and you're like, oh, wow. And then you hear $13 million and then you think about your local Dollar Tree, right? And you don't imagine that your local Dollar Tree has that much money, okay? Dollar Tree is a national chain that made actual billions of dollars, not in revenue, in profit last year, okay? So, context. Investigators with the department's Wage and Hour Division found that a North Carolina home health care service, Community Alternative Housing, paid employees straight time hours for all hours worked. By doing so, the employer failed to pay the employees a time-and-a-half premium for hours over 40 in a work week, which is an overtime violation of the Fair Labor Standards Act. The Department of Labor recovered $174,751 for 50 workers. That's going to be a big payday for those folks. Investigators with the U.S. Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division found the employer deducted lunch breaks automatically without first making sure that workers did, in fact, take a lunch break. That employer was the S&W Renovation and Landscape Contractor Incorporated in Rolette, Texas. The automatic deduction caused overtime and record-keeping violations of the Fair Labor Standards Act. The DOL recovered $103,000 in back wages and damages for 104 workers. Two Sonic Drive-In franchisees in South Carolina found 91 children under age 16 working longer and later than legally allowed by child labor provisions in the Fair Labor Standards Act. The DOL assessed about $60,000 in civil money penalties for the violations. Twice within 2 months in 2023, U.S. Department of Labor inspectors observed Missouri contractor Cheltenham Construction Services, a company with a history of workplace safety violations dating back to 2015, once again exposing employees to deadly fall hazards as they performed siding and roofing work in Lake St. Louis and O'Fallon. OSHA proposed $334,000 in fines. A federal investigation has found that a Virginia-based information technology support company under contract with the U.S. Marine Corps in North Carolina incorrectly classified 10 workers as exempt from overtime, leading to the recovery of $77,000 in back wages and benefits owed to them. A federal investigation has found that a San Antonio wire drawing company could have prevented an employee from suffering fatal injuries by following required workplace safety standards. Folks, you're going to save a lot of people's lives, a lot of people's injuries, and a lot of money by following required workplace safety standards. OSHA proposed $300,000 in fines for the violations. The U.S. Department of Labor filed a lawsuit against Tyler Pipe Company alleging violations of federal whistleblower protections after the company fired an employee because they requested to use a respirator to protect them from smoke and fumes in the work area. The department is seeking to make the employee whole. U.S. Department of Labor investigators found 5 Florida skating rinks allowing 33 14 and 15-year-old employees to work outside of legally allowed hours, which is a violation of the child labor provisions of the Fair Labor Standards Act. The department proposed $26,000 in civil money penalties. We're going to end it with a warning for bosses in New Orleans. The Wage and Hour Division's New Orleans District Office has partnered with the Workplace Justice Project, which is a nonprofit worker advocacy organization, signing a memorandum of understanding to improve both organizations' effectiveness in providing critical services to low-wage workers. The memorandum establishes a partnership that will cross-train staff on how to identify labor violations and increase information sharing between the agencies to help prevent and respond to potential violations, to potential federal violations better. The initiative will also improve both agencies' ability to educate workers on their labor rights and protections.
Wow, that's really cool.
Very cool for our
like
listeners
that.
in New Orleans.
Yeah, I like that. And anyone listening who's connected to that, hit us up. I'd love to talk to y'all about what you're doing and see, you know, what we can learn from that.
Absolutely. So, okay. So in Boss Watch, we are not only highlighting how much bosses break the law. That's kind of like the primary motivator, right? It's because, you know, we kind of thought of that because, you know, every night on the evening news, you know, you're going to see some poor sap's mugshot because they stole, you know, a bag of Doritos from the local grocery store, something like that. Okay, you see that every night on the evening news, every night. But bosses steal more from workers than people do from other people. And that's just a fact. You look that up. Wage theft versus other theft. Wage theft is more, okay? So we do that to try to put it in perspective about just how, you know, how in many cases employers are like criminal syndicates almost. But also what it does, what Boss Watch does, is it highlights the important role that government agencies play in protecting the rights and the property of employees, of workers. Okay, the Department of Labor, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, the Wage and Hour Division, the Equal Employment and Opportunity Commission, the you know, all of these agencies, very, very important, and they're all underfunded. They have all been basically flat funded, and in some cases actually had their funding cut over the last 10 years, and
right.
And so that's very, very bad.
Yeah, the more an agency actually helps regular people, the more likely it is that they're underfunded and subject to all sorts of sabotage, basically.
Exactly.
And so that's something that is a big factor here. And I was going to also say that something else that came to mind as we were talking about all this wage theft, you know, just highlights again the reason why we advocate for all workers to have unions. Right, because unions have when you come together with your coworkers as unions, you're able to organize and fight inside the workplace and hold employers accountable and secure contracts, you know, secure things in writing, and then hold the employer accountable to that and fight for your members and fight to get their pay and fight to get their right benefits. You can do that. So that's why, you know, I think it's important that all workers deserve a union. And there are a lot of workers out there who do not have unions right now or do not have access to unions at the moment. And that's a shame. And for workers that do have unions, it's important that you're active in your union and you're involved and you're always thinking about how to make it stronger because, you know, that's really key is continuing to build and strengthen your union so that you can hold your employers accountable and so that you can fight for your members and improve the lives of your members, so that you're not dealing with these situations, right? Because you don't, and I imagine that for many of these situations, it's non-union workplaces. You know, that's not something that's necessarily going to be mentioned in the press release, so to speak. You know, not exclusively, but I would imagine oftentimes these are non-union environments where some of these violations are happening, because by and large unions can prevent some of these violations of safety and violations of wages and violations of child labor law. And that's, God, that was another one. The child labor is just really, it really is becoming more and more of a problem in this country, and in the South in particular.
Yeah, but and so, you know, highlighting the importance of government agencies, and also, you know, the underfunding of them and the understaffing as well. Here's something that the American Federation of Government Employees put out last week during the Republican presidential debates, and we're going to play a clip about this subject here in just a second. In 1945, the federal government employed 2.5% of the population. 1 in 50 people who worked for the federal government. Today, it is less than 1%. 0.6% of the population works for the federal government. Okay, so people, and that actually surprised me. If you had asked me how much, you know, people work for I would have guessed it was probably the same as 1945. You know, people are always talking about, oh, the government's so much bigger, so much bigger. Well, in fact, actually, it is literally smaller when you talk about it in proportion to the population. But so I say all that to say, listen to what this Republican presidential candidate, who will not be president, obviously, Asa Hutchinson, says, but it is indicative of a Republican position. Let's listen to what Asa Hutchinson said about the federal government.
And I made sure that we shrunk the size of government. We have 14% fewer state employees in Arkansas after I left government than when I took over as governor 8 years ago. I tell that because that's what we need in Washington, D.C. We need somebody who can actually constrain the growth of the federal government, that can actually reduce the size, and I've pledged to reduce by 10% our federal non-defense workforce. That's a specific pledge to make that attacks the administrative state.
So there we go. He wants, and so when they say that, what we were just talking about, the agencies that are keeping an eye on the bosses, that are protecting workers, that are protecting the community from bosses who want to pollute their community, that's who he wants to cut. Those are the budgets that he wants to cut. He specifically said, oh no, we're going to set defense spending aside and continue to increase that, but we're going to cut any agency that actually protects people. We're going to cut it by 10% is what he wants to do.
It's a lot of people's jobs and livelihoods.
That's a lot of people's jobs and livelihoods, and it's a lot of bosses who are going to get away with stealing from their employees, murdering their employees, and polluting their communities. That's what it means to cut government. That's what that means. And that's what they're about, because that's who his donors are. That's who funds the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, by and large. Because remember, the federal government has, most of these agencies have been flat funded over the last 10 years. Okay, it hasn't only been Republicans in office the last 10 years. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and wrap up, folks. We appreciate you listening. We're going to wrap up the first half of our program. We have a second half of the program we call Overtime that we are online only. So we go for a full another hour and a half. We've got a whole second half of the show. If you're listening to us on WVNN and you want to tune in, you can find us online, YouTube, Facebook. We're going to continue going for another hour and a half. And we got some good stuff to talk about. We have Brother Chris Townsend's going to be talking about the Wabtec strike in Pennsylvania with us. And we've got a brother from Memphis talking to us about a bakery plant strike. The International Fragrance and Flavors, their plant, they've been on strike now for months. So we're going to talk to him about that strike. So we got 2 guests in overtime. It's going to be really great. And we're going to be playing more clips from the Republican presidential debate, because that wasn't the only thing that they said about workers and how they feel about us. So we're going to dig into that. It's going to be fun. And it would be funny if it weren't so terrifying. Labor Notes are hosting a series of online trainings. So definitely always keep them, that's another place you want to bookmark, labornotes.org. This month they have What to Do When Your Union Breaks Your Heart. They have a Secrets of a Successful Organizer trainings, and they have stewards workshops, so definitely keep that up. The second annual Huntsville Human Rights Film Festival will take place September 14 to 16 on the campus of the University of Alabama in Huntsville, so that's something to check out. You can Google that for more information. Adam was on America's Workforce on the 3rd of August. You can go back and check that out. Shop Talk airs every Thursday morning, 9:30 a.m. Central Time. Last week we talked about new employee orientations. Very good. Very, very important to union leaders. Get on our email list, tvlr.fm/contact, and head over to overtime with us, folks. And other than that, we'll see you next week. Okay. All right, folks, we are off the radio now. Appreciate everybody staying and hanging out with us.
Absolutely.
So like I said, we've got a really cool overtime
Yeah,
planned.
looking forward to both of these guests.
Yeah, Chris Townsend, always a good guest. Haven't talked to Cedric Wilson much. I did talk to him on the phone this morning. I'm anticipating a great interview. And very important subjects, because both of these have been strikes that have been going on for months, actually. The UE strike at Wabtec and the IFF strike in Memphis. Months-long strikes, both of them. So we want to do what we can to shine a light on those. And,
Absolutely.
And then we'll have a little bit of fun playing some clips of these Republicans talking about how much they hate workers. And then we'll really have some fun playing some clips from Brother Sean Fain's live stream yesterday, talking about the UAW strike authorization vote. So we're going to take a break really quick. We'll be right back with Overtime.
Come on, you poor workers, good news, I'll tell how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Folks, welcome back. You are still listening to the Valley Labor Report, Alabama's only union talk radio show. We really appreciate you hanging out with us. Means a lot. We enjoy doing what we're doing, and we hope it's important. We hope that people get something out of it. Yesterday was a big day for us. We had several people out in the wild tell us that they listen to us and they enjoy our work, and that it has been helpful for them. So that's why we do what we do. We do have 30 some odd people watching, over 30, 35, 32, 36, 38, something like that. And only 26 people have liked the stream. So let's get that up if we could. Everybody listen, if you haven't liked the stream, then consider doing that. It really helps us out, is what they tell us. Somebody said in the chat, sounds like a country music song while our halftime interlude was playing. And that is a recording of Florence Reese, the author of Which Side Are You On, the songwriter, the person who wrote it. She was singing that at a UMWA convention, and it was a cappella. So we asked Jules Taylor, who is the producer of the Working People podcast, to do us up some stuff with it. And so all of our music that you hear, all of our intros, our outros, our musical interludes, all of that, we had originally commissioned by Jules Taylor. So he put her vocals on top of music that he made. So very cool. Jules is obviously very talented. If you listen through that interlude and you heard the song, very cool. And it's also, I think, very cool to actually have the writer of Which Side Are You On as part of our show. And it's cool to kind of have the more modern, and that's kind of like what we try to do with the show too. Like, it's almost like symbolic of what we try to do with the show. We try to bring in the history and the traditions of the labor movement in to a modern audience in kind of modern way. We still are on terrestrial radio. We think that is important, but we also put it out online and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I really like the song. Very big fan of Florence Reese and Jules Taylor, and really like that collaboration there. So let's go ahead and the first thing that I wanted to and we also have the phone lines open, 844-899-TVLR. That's 844-899-8857 if anybody wants to call in. But it's probably going to be about 30 minutes before we can get to you, because we're going to get to one segment, and then we're going to talk to Chris Townsend about the UE Wabtec strike. But this first segment, I wanted to talk about how the Republican Party just really attacked teachers last week during their debate. And, I know that that's an issue that's very, very close to Adam. He said that he did not watch the Republican presidential debate. And so I have a couple of clips about teachers that I wanted to play and get Adam's reaction to. So let's play this first one.
The only way we change education in this nation is to break the backs of the teachers' unions. They are standing in the doorhouse of our kids, locking them into failing schools and locking them out of the greatest future they could have.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Kind of disturbing to see the use of civil rights imagery as a way to propose busting labor and declaring war on the educators, the dedicated men and women in the classroom who are trying to help these young folks, and to use civil rights imagery and language around that it's just insulting, I think, to everyone involved, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he is likening the people who are trying to protect public education, who are opposed to public dollars being diverted from public schools and going into private schools and going into religious schools and going into these in some states, literally unaccountable institutions
Right.
that don't have an obligation to teach everybody in their community, that don't have an obligation to educate and care for students with disabilities or students from poor backgrounds, right? Or students who have parents who are not, who are not straight, a straight couple, a straight married couple. In the case of religious institutions, you can have children turned away because their parents are gay, right? And so, teachers unions, they're not even saying their opposition is not even to private education, right? Nobody is going around, none of the teachers unions across the country are going around and saying it ought to be illegal for Catholic churches to have schools. It ought to be illegal for Baptist churches to have schools. It ought to be illegal for the rich and wealthy to create their own, private academy islands or whatever, okay?
Oh, and it is in some other countries, just so we're clear.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that to say that maybe that
I'm just saying, like, no teachers unions are advocating for that.
Right. Even though that, maybe they're we could talk about the merits and demerits of that policy maybe if that ever gets on the table. But right now it is not. The only thing that teachers unions across the country are saying with respect to this issue is that taxpayer dollars ought not go to these private, unaccountable institutions. And that is a very, very simple request. That is a very simple statement of values, right? That's something that, in fact, actually most people agree with. And so to paint teachers, educators, as Bull Connor is gross. I mean, really, really gross. And Tim Scott is not the only person who is doing this on the debate stage.
Tim Scott knows exactly what he's doing, and it is very insulting to use the civil rights, language and imagery to advance an agenda that is ultimately aligned with segregation. It's just messed up.
Right.
Don't appreciate you, Tim Scott.
No, not at all. But he, like I said, he wasn't the only one on the debate stage attacking teachers. There was somebody else. Let's play this clip.
Tim's right, by the way. And I started this in 2010 by going right after the teachers unions in New Jersey and drove them down to an all-time low popularity rating because they were putting themselves before our kids. That is the biggest threat to our country, not UFOs.
Okay.
Teachers unions are the biggest threat to the country, because they're advocating for decent salaries, decent working conditions, smaller class sizes,
right.
Nurses in every building, counselors for every student.
Right.
Because they're advocating for the needs of the students and the educators that serve those students, they're a threat.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they want you to see them.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I'm not surprised to hear it from them, of course, but, I almost appreciate the honesty, though.
Yeah.
Almost. I mean, I'm not going to give them any credit, but, I do prefer that. I'd rather you just be upfront about it. We've obviously seen a lot of Democrats over the last, however many years who love to show up to the teachers union conventions, who love to get their PAC contributions, but then we're happy to also help promote agendas of privatization and corporate education reform, so at least, at least they're explicit about it. Again, why is it that they're opposed to the teachers union? Would they, they're not going to be very honest about that it stands in the way of their agenda of profit.
Right.
They're not going to be honest about the fact that they want teachers to be paid less. They think teachers deserve less health care. they think that teachers deserve bigger class sizes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, they're not going to admit that.
Yeah, and and obviously, I mean, the idea that teachers just have it too good and too easy is just such a kind of laughable thing.
Anyone who's worked in education knows,
or anybody who knows anybody who's worked in education.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not really interested in, folks who traffic in those narratives. I think know what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So have we got Chris in the Zoom?
Let's see. Let me double check here. I do believe so. I think we got Chris in the Zoom.
Fantastic. All right. So Chris Townsend is a longtime labor organizer. He was formerly I think the director of the organizing department for UE, United Electrical Workers Union. He's also been the director of organizing for the Amalgamated Transit Union. And now he is a prolific hawker of books.
And just like all around a good dude.
All around a good guy, absolutely.
Right? Just a good dude, and really appreciate all he does for the movement.
Absolutely, we are love the books that we've gotten from Brother Chris, and the work that he's done to get books back in print. Has been very, very important and beneficial for working folks. So,
absolutely.
Chris Townsend, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And on my bio, I was the political director for the United Electrical Workers and then the organizing director for ATU. I refer to myself as the jack of all trades and at least the master of several. So there.
There you go. Well, that's I appreciate that clarification. So, Chris, having been involved with the UE for so long, you are, and actually, being kind of relatively close, at least closer than us, to this strike in Pennsylvania. Talk to us about what the UE Wabtec strike. What's been going on there?
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for taking an interest in this. This is the largest industrial strike underway. Currently, it's been underway since June 22nd. This is the United Electrical Workers Union, two locals, Local 506 and Local 618. That's the production and salaried locals, both are on strike, at a company named Wabtec. It's the old Westinghouse air brake technologies. They souped up the name to Wabtec. And for probably 100 years, this was a General Electric company facility. And in 2019, anyone who follows the decline and fall of the General Electric company, the collapse of the company really due to corruption and wild speculation and 101 other outrageous corporate behaviors, all of which went uninvestigated and unprosecuted, I might say. But in the company's stage of collapse in 2018 and 2019, they sold their railroad locomotive production facility, one in Erie. They had already established a second in the South in Fort Worth, Texas. Low wage, no benefits, all the usual reasons why companies would do that. And they sold them to this company called Wabtec. And UE was forced into a strike at its first dealings with Wabtec in 2019. And now here we are at the end of that. That was eventually settled. And now here we are at the end of the contract that was settled as a result of the first strike. Now here we are in the midst of a multi-month strike now by the 1,400 workers who assemble locomotives and do some other products in that facility. So it's a tough strike. The issues are what you might expect, not in any particular order. Wages, of course. When you go through that kind of a corporate change out, you have to switch as a union from dealing with one conglomerate to another. Things lag, and the wage situation, of course, the inflation factor has kicked in since 2019. So wages are an issue. There's also an interesting, probably the unique thing about this strike compared to others, and why folks maybe would take a little interest in it, is that one of the demands of the union is to restore the right to strike over unresolved grievances, non-disciplinary grievances. And this existed under General Electric, and it was a large part of why the company pretty much minded its P's and Q's on a lot of things. GE was a monster and an anti-union monster, but that right to strike and the occasional exercise of that right to strike mid-term, mid-contract, legal right, written into the contract to resolve unresolved grievances. It kept the company honest. And of course, that was lost in the changeover and during that first strike. And of course, the record will now reflect that Wabtec just harasses people and harasses the union into multiple arbitrations. It's a financial punishment of the local. And so in any case, the labor relations of this corporation are in fact, in some ways, even worse than General Electric, if you can believe that. And workers took strike action on June 22nd, like I said. And then the last thing I'll say, just to encapsulate it, to abbreviate it, the issue here, guys, really is the railroad locomotive industry, which we wouldn't expect very many folks to understand, but it's a trustified industry. There's really only two significant builders of locomotives, so Wabtec, the former GE, and Caterpillar now through one of its subsidiaries, which is the former General Motors piece. And these companies are both anti-union. They've been both trying to systematically de-unionize their U.S. operations. And one of the things that UE, I'm very proud of, has gone after them, that when you get into the details, you get into the weeds of why aren't more new locomotives being produced, it's because the companies, the rail companies and the remanufacturers work the remanufacturing angle. Because if you remanufacture an old used, even a jalopy locomotive, you're not subject to any of the current, what they call Tier 4 emissions standards. So what that means really is if you want to remanufacture an old polluting locomotive and then still have it out there running around polluting beyond what a new locomotive would bring, there's no incentive or much less incentive to buy a new locomotive. So UE, to its credit, has raised this issue, as part of the climate change thing. And, the federal government is complicit in this and has been for multiple administrations going back decades. But the federal government has the ability, because of its tight regulation of the railroads, if it exercises that power, to move in this direction and force the railroads to do what they should do and could do, but won't do because they're not forced. So this is kind of an interesting strike with that right to strike over unresolved grievances as a key issue. Of course, the wages, like I mentioned. And then this press on the company to actually more seriously expand the work that it does in Erie on, I guess you could call them green locomotives. We're really talking about less emissions, so a less polluting type technology. But this is key. The pollution caused by these locomotives is significant. Anybody that's ever lived around a railroad yard or facility knows that. So in a nutshell, that's where we're at. We've been on strike since June 22nd. The members have held very, very tight, almost no scabs. Scabs have been brought in from outside. That's been a bit of a fiasco for the company and a public relations black eye. But and negotiations are ongoing to an extent. They start and stop. But this is not a case where negotiations have broken down completely, at least yet.
And how long has the strike been going on for?
Since June 22nd, well, about 2.5 months, I guess, or 2 months.
Yeah, almost 3, going on 3. If it's June, June 22nd, no, it's more like 2.5 months. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So the and why is the company saying that they won't? What is their rationale? Because theoretically, if they have the right to strike over, non-disciplinary issues, well, the way that you could avoid them striking over disciplinary issues is just follow the contract you agree to. Like, right. If you're willing to agree to a contract why would you be so opposed to an enforcement mechanism?
Sure. Well, I think it's apparent, and this is not unique to Wabtec. These companies are pathologically anti-union. I use the word pathologically carefully because this is almost a medical defect in their minds. They have no respect for the workers. I mean that sincerely, because this is an ideological understanding that they have, that their attorneys, their whole management, negotiating team, it's inconceivable to them that you would allow a worker to strike ever anywhere. I mean, they view us as serfs and vassals, really, in every way. They're rare to admit that, but that's kind of their notion. And then the notion that somehow the company would agree to a language in a collective bargaining agreement that under really certain very limited surgical situations that the workers would be able to resort to strike action. Well, that's for those fat cats, that's just unimaginable. And I commend UE for taking this on, because this ability to strike mid-contract over unresolved grievances was formerly, if you go back, you would have to go back 30, 50 years ago and later, but this was quite common in many industrial contracts and in many pattern agreements and whatnot. And it wasn't very frequently used. It didn't have to be, because in those situations where the boss was aware that it could face this, well, let's follow the contract and not start a war and all this. But absent that pressure, and we see this all across the labor movement, I think half the shows that you guys do, you have employers that have a union, they sign a contract and they violate it, they undermine it, and with impunity many times. So it's hard for the management to even conceive that while the companies would prefer not to deal with any union at all, but if they're stuck dealing with them, they certainly don't want to agree to things like this. So this is a real battle royale. And, that's part of why I volunteered to lend a hand, with the work. The strike is not getting the degree of publicity that it should command. That's probably because it's only in one city, in Erie. Erie's a little bit out of all the media markets, but it's also, we've had, in the last year, we've had the enormous railroad strikes, strike breaking by Biden, which is, 100,000 workers compared to 1,400 in Erie. We've had the UPS. You don't get any bigger than that. So now the writers' strike, the Screen Actors Guild. I think it's a bit overshadowed by all that other strike activity. But anybody that would want to examine what's going on in this strike, you just go to UE Local 506, put that in your search, and you'll find the local website, the National Union UE website. You'll find all the local reporting that's been going on, and you can pick up with it.
Yeah, I think it's just really remarkable to fight on those issues, to have those issues as part of a contract fight, because to have consequences for the employer is something we talk about all the time. It's something we were talking about with Boss Watch this morning, just all the things that employers will do if they can get away with it. And like you said, it's not something that even necessarily has to be used all the time, but if there's a credible threat of it, there's a credible threat of consequence, it can really help improve people's lives on the job. And the climate piece of that, I think, is really huge too. That is really cool to know, and I think that is yet again another area where the federal government could be doing more, should be doing more, in a way to help our environment and help workers at the same time.
Yeah, and well, the thing about strong enforcement provisions is that actually more often than not, they're not enforced because they don't have to be. If you actually have strong enforcement provisions, then what happens is people are more likely, companies are more likely to follow what they've agreed to follow the law. And, we saw that with Joy Silk, actually. We talked about the partial resurrection of the Joy Silk doctrine at the NLRB. And, a lot of people kind of in the labor media space were saying that, Joy Silk would bring about the institution of card check. And Actually, that's not what we saw when Joy Silk was the standing doctrine at the NLRB. Right. We saw that employers just didn't commit ULPs during elections, and workers were able to have actually something close to a free and fair election, as much as you can have as a worker in a capitalist society where your boss, signs your check and all of that kind of stuff and, all those inherent issues. But, they didn't break the law as much. You didn't have Joy Silk bargaining orders, typically. You just had fair elections.
Right.
Yeah, something I'll add, two things, I guess, to that point. The political support that UE has received has been good from certainly the bulk of the local politicians, not all, but some, and some of the state and national political leaders. But on the federal level, Senator Fetterman came up and walked the picket line. And Senator Casey hasn't been seen anywhere. Now, I bring that up because Senator Casey's the senior senator from Pennsylvania, and I worked with him 15 years ago. And his preferred style of operation in anything to do with these companies is to issue, kind of weak press releases, wring his hands, and hide. And while he would be listed as a friend and a supporter, what is he doing actively to pressure Wabtec? Senator Fetterman set a fine example. I met with him a month ago, I guess. I met with him over here, and he's ready. What do you need me to do? And what's perverse about this is that there's no industry more regulated than the railroad industry. Now, whether or not the government exercises that power that it has and influences these companies is another matter. And folks may realize that we've had an incredible development of near complete monopoly in the large railroads, what we call the Class 1s. They're the ones that primarily buy the new locomotives. Not too many years ago, there were several hundred Class 1 railroads. Sit down and hear this. Today, there are 4 in the entire country. And this tremendous amount of monopoly power, of course, this would have explained in part what gave rise to the strike that Biden had to break in the rail industry. You have 4 companies that dominate the entire United States. It's absurd. It's dangerous. And those companies make decisions that suit them and their shareholders and their management. They don't make decisions based on what serves the shippers of goods and materials on the rail. And they certainly don't think about the railroad locomotive industry. And I guess something that should be injected into any discussion of this strike is that this should be and has been a export, a technology-led export industry. And while it still does provide some exports, the industry is being systematically destroyed, moved south, including to Mexico. Both of these corporations that market new large volumes of locomotives, which would be Caterpillar and Wabtec, both source a growing amount of their material from Mexico. GE, as I had mentioned, I think had built a mill in Fort Worth, non-union mill there. And it's all seeking the rock bottom wages, rock bottom regulation, and anything. And the industry has now been wrecked in many ways, very atomized and wrecked. And now we find ourselves in this position today with, really worn out, polluting locomotives being rebuilt, put back again, rather than any sensible national rail plan. And you might think that some of the political leadership would look today and say, well, maybe this is time for us to electrify some of the rail lines and really begin to expand our rail lines, reconsider this bizarre attachment that we have to highway building and unlimited burning of fossil fuel. No, the railroads have been allowed to just drift into the hands of what is now the 4 enormous monopolies, and they make the decisions that suit them. And the political leadership kind of just sits and wonders, well, wow, that's too bad. We saw the catastrophe in Palestine, Pennsylvania, which is part of it. I mean, you guys have covered some of this. So this question of who's building the locomotives is part of that, and it has to be addressed. But it has to be addressed as part of a total review of what has happened or what has been allowed to happen in this very key industry that we have.
Right. Yeah, I so agree with that, and I mean I think it's one of the most important industries in the entire country. And something else that came to mind as you were talking is I just saw a statement from RWU talking about the Sierra Club. And opportunities for them to work together, and a new report that Sierra Club put out about the rails that did include quite a few of the labor issues that RWU has been agitating around. And so I think that's promising. I think anytime there's more folks out here talking about this, because to your point, it's like we're in the Gilded Age all over again in so many ways in this country, and from the inequality of wealth to the inequality of class power, and yet again we have a railroad monopoly, which is so dominant in this country, and we have to fight back against it. And it's going to take a massive public movement to demand better. So right. And this strike is just kind of one piece of that puzzle, and ties in, to this broader struggle.
Yeah. One last comment, if I'm allowed. When I was the political director for UE, and I worked on this issue for so many years I can't count, and for year upon year upon year, United Electrical Workers, Local 506 and 618, we would go to the political leadership at all levels, from the White House on down, and we would bring ample evidence with us, documented evidence. We would say, if you don't act, if you don't do something swift, something significant, this industry of railroad locomotive production will be destroyed and offshored. And nothing that we predicted has not come true.
Right.
And it's only the inaction of too many of our lawmakers at federal, state, both, that has allowed these companies to run them up like this. And now here we are. When I joined UE, that mill in Erie had 5,000 union members in it. Today it has 1,400. I could go through chapter and verse. Everything that this union has predicted and shown to the political leadership has come true. So that's why I get a little annoyed, because I said, well, then what are we waiting for? Are we waiting for somebody to turn out the lights? Is that what should we invite the senator to come and turn out the lights after everything we said has come true? I think we have to act dramatically before that happens.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I think that's exactly right. Chris Townsend, former political director for UE, former organizing director for the Amalgamated Transit Union, and current all-around good guy supporting working folks wherever he can. We really appreciate your time this morning.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, brother.
So while, while they are fighting for the right to strike over enforcement of their contract, I mean, and that's really
that is such a cool issue, I think, to be part of the fight, and such an important one. And I also applaud UE for taking this on, and I love to see when our unions are really taking a comprehensive look at these struggles,
right? And
not, because it's easy to get really laser focused on just one or two issues. But they all connect, and you always got to be thinking about how are we addressing the balance of power in the workplace. And so that was really fascinating to learn about.
Absolutely, yeah, exciting to learn about, and looking forward to their victory.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's one thing that I want to find out more about in terms of strike funds and what they need, what we can do to support. I think it was great, to have Chris on and talk about this, and we'll get that clip out there. But absolutely want to send our solidarity and love to those brothers and sisters out there. That's an important fight, and one that does connect to so many others.
Yeah. Something else that people have been kind of scrutinizing lately is retirement. And the 401k system that has really, kind of scammed a generation and a half of working people.
I was talking about this with, my in-laws not too long ago. We were just talking about pensions, and, it was in the context of UAW, actually, UAW pensions. But, we talked about how, used to, pensions were kind of a standard. It was just something that not everybody could expect, but a lot of people could expect. Enough to where, you would expect it at many jobs across many industries. And
even non-union ones.
Even non-union ones, right? And now, largely, that's because of the efforts of unions. And that's part of the value of what unions bring to the table in lifting up the standards for all working people. But we talked about that, how it really has been that is a decline in the standard of living for working class people to not have that guaranteed defined benefit pension plan that really allows you to retire with some dignity.
And that's right. That's pensions are so important to people's ability to retire with dignity, and not have to toil for the last years of their life, and to be able to have the freedom to spend your last days on this earth doing something that is fulfilling to you, or to just be able to rest, your weary soul after 30, 40, 50 years of grinding your body and your mind away to make profit for some capitalist. It's not a crime, actually, in my book, to just want to rest once you turn 65. But most people don't want to do that. Or younger, right? I'm planning to retire younger. I'm planning to retire at 57. So that's and fortunately, the federal workforce, we have a pension. We also have like a 401k, replica. And then we have, like everybody, Social Security, and those are things that the pension and then the pension being weakened by the 401k is not great, but the pension was obviously fought for by my union, and so Lord willing, if nothing happens, I feel relatively confident that I'm going to be able to retire at 57. And everybody should be able to retire at 57. And, that doesn't mean that I'm going to stop doing anything, but that means that, like, Lord willing, at 57, I'm going to have the freedom to do, like, anything that I want, within reason, and not have to do something just because I need to earn a living, because I will have spent 37 years, serving the American people in the federal government, and I'll be rewarded for that by being able to spend the last hopefully a couple of decades of my life kind of doing something that I want, but so many people don't have that anymore, and that's because of the scam that we've that has been foisted on American workers, the 401k, and so that has meant that people are having to work later, people are having to put retirement off for longer, and some people today don't even anticipate ever being able to retire, but according to right-wing radio host Glenn Beck, that might actually, be a good thing, in fact. Let's play this clip from his show.
Americans who devote decades of their lives to toil should be able to retire in dignity and safety, period. I mean, I hate to point this out, but in the Hebrew language, there is no word for retire. Now,
pause that for a second.
I believe that, I don't know if I'm ever going to retire, but
oh, well, if there's no word in Hebrew for retire, well, shit, Glenn. I guess I should have to work till I'm 95. Checkmate. You got me. Checkmate. Yeah. I literally, there's nothing else to say. There's no word in Hebrew for retire. Well, that means we can't ever retire, right? And so what he's responding to here is Tyranny, Inc. That is a new book put out by Sohrab Ahmari that I may actually reach out to this fella and talk to him on the show. He was on Left Reckoning. He is a conservative. He considers himself a conservative. He's kind of socially conservative, maybe more socially libertarian, but he is personally opposed to kind of social liberal values, but he's economically, he's more kind of on the left is what he says. And in this book, he basically kind of lays out, that, conservatives should empower labor actually and be in favor of unions, and because that's actually it's actually good for the family. If you're if the father or the mother or both of them have good wages and good health care and then a retirement, it's good for the family, it's good for the community, good for the church, if people are comfortable. But
and something Alex said in the chat that really I think resonates is, they said we would be an entirely different country if more of us had pensions. Financial stress just makes divisive rhetoric more effective on both sides. Stressing folks about their final days is even better. And I think that is that's huge. And whether it's the prevailing wage that we were talking about this morning with the building trades, or a retirement pension, when we're helping working people live a more dignified life, they're going to be less stressed.
Right.
Those are better neighbors. That's a better community. Those are healthier people with, like you said, more time for family, more ability to take care of their family. And last I checked, a lot of folks really like family values. I hear about those a lot in Alabama. Good old-fashioned family values, and so I think having time to spend with your family, I think being able to know that you can keep the lights on and feed your family,
it's good for the family. Being
able to go to the doctor when you need to, being able to take your kids to the doctor when they need to go to the doctor, that's good for the family.
Yeah, shocker. So, that's kind of Sohrab Ahmari's case. And I would recommend, listening to his interview with David Griscom on Left Reckoning. It's kind of an interesting dialogue, have, a socialist and a conservative talking about labor power. It's interesting. It's interesting. I would recommend checking it out. But so Glenn is here, responding to this and saying, it's actually not conservative to think that a family should be supported. So let's play that back and let's let him finish his thought there after he told us, really put the truth bomb on us about the Hebrew language.
Americans who devote decades of their lives to toil should be able to retire in dignity and safety, period. I mean, I hate to point this out, but in the Hebrew language, there is no word for retire. Now, I believe that, I don't know if I'm ever going to retire, but even if I did retire, it would just be to do something else. There's...
Yeah, that's often what regular people do too. But he did hate to point it out, though.
Yeah.
You're never stopping working, and that doesn't mean that you have to toil in the same job that you've been in. However, what he says, a stronger labor movement with government backing could demand that large firms restore the older model of retirement based on defined benefits. Wait, the older model? You mean the one before the government took over Social Security? You mean one where you did...
The government took over Social Security. It was previously apparently private.
Yeah, no. Social Security is not the same as defined benefit pensions. It's actually two different things you're talking about, bud.
Did get a golden watch? You did work at a company. Not all companies did it, but you could pay in some of your salary and you could retire and the company would help you with the retirement. That model was destroyed by the federal government, creating yet another agency. And what did they do with our money? They don't have our money. Every dollar that I have paid into Social Security my whole life, I'm not going to see. I'm not going to see it. They don't have it.
Yeah, I mean, I some of this goes to the idea that like the concept of a person going through their life, working really hard at a job that is trying to produce for their family, and at the end of that life, they're able to, let's call it retirement for the sake of this, but like, what is retirement? I mean, as you point out, retirement might be working at your church. It might be, it doesn't mean you just sit around at a golf course necessarily, right? Like it's something that you want to do, finding that thing that you want to do. And that is something that I think we all aspire to.
We do.
When I look at the economy, I think to myself, man, if I could just have the money that the government has taken from me
Correct.
over these years. I could do that on my own. I wouldn't need government programs, but instead they take them from me. They give me a promise of a future IOU with money that I know they don't have.
How stupid.
What the fuck is he talking about?
I mean, like actual insane stuff. So there was a couple of arguments there. One of them is that Social Security destroyed the pension system. Okay? So, and you know, presumably saying Social Security was taken over by the government, that was kind of like he misspoke, presumably. Presumably, Glenn Beck does not actually believe that before the government took over Social Security, that there was a Social Security before the government, that the government then took over and nationalized. Presumably, he doesn't take that. Presumably, he means the government taking over retirement in the form of Social Security. And he says that basically, his argument is that destroyed the pension system. And that's just factually not true, okay? And how do I know this? Well, we can look and see. Let's Google really quick. When was Social Security started? Okay, here we go. 1935. Okay? So is his argument that actually in 1934, everyone had a pension? And then the government comes along and just destroys it. That's what you would have to believe for this argument to be correct, is that before 1935, everybody just had a pension. And then the government comes along, FDR passes Social Security, and now everybody's fucked, right?
Well, you know, he hates to point it out.
But you know, we do like the truth on this program. Here's another truth. The number of employers offering traditional pension plans, according to this, and now this may not be totally exactly right, but I think it's going to be kind of close, got up to almost 50% between 1970 and 1990. The workforce.com says that 45% of all private sector employees had a pension by 1970. Inquiron.com says that in 1998, 50% of employers were offering traditional pension plans to new hires. Okay, so, you know, I think that we can conservatively estimate that sometime between 1970 and 1990, we actually hit the peak of retirement, which is 1970, 1990. The middle of that is 1980. And then, you know, from that time period, we started seeing the decline of pensions. Leave it to the listener to figure out what the hell happened in 1980. Well, just that's, you know, there's some homework for you. But if the peak was in 1980 and Social Security started in 1935, that's actually almost 50 years after the implementation of Social Security is when pensions started declining. I mean, what just foolishness. Insane stuff. I mean, just totally incorrect. Totally devoid of anything, anything that is related to what workers experience here in the real world. I mean, it's wild.
Yeah, we just got a comment from Jimmy Fedora, who said, in ancient Hebrew, there's no word for deceptive, misinformed talk show host, so Beck shouldn't have his job. That's exactly what I was gonna say, and then someone verbalized it for me. So
Strom McCallum with a $2 super chat said there's no word for railroad in Aramaic either. So, you know,
whoops.
I mean, I guess railroads are imaginary; they don't exist.
Yeah, it's. What a trip!
What a trip! Yeah,
and, you know, think about the fact that millions of dollars has been pumped into this guy, and like promoting this guy, getting his foolishness into people's brains.
Yeah, I mean, pumping.
Pollution. It is like intellectual pollution. They're polluting the airwaves with this garbage.
Like, he ought to be fined for this. Like, the EPA ought to give him a citation.
Yeah.
But, you know, so, like, lest you think, though, that this is something that is relegated to the fringes of the online right. I have another clip for you from the Republican presidential debate stage. Let's play that clip.
What we also did was cut pension payments to public employees to make sure that taxpayers were not being soaked by a public employee union system that was killing the taxpayer.
Thank you, Governor.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there you go. If you serve the public, if you are a public servant, and nowhere are you getting rich off of being a public servant, right? That just doesn't really happen. If you're just a rank and file worker working for the government, you're not getting rich.
You know, with the exceptions of like, you know, the university football coach, or of course you're going to find, you know, those kind of
heads
things.
of agencies. But if you're a rank and file worker, you're not really going to get rich. So if you serve the public, you know, you administer Social Security, or you run the town office. Chris Christie, presidential candidate for the Republicans, thinks that you do not deserve to be able to retire with dignity, and nobody else on that debate stage challenged him on that. Okay, so we can just assume that this is at least an accepted position in the Republican Party, is that people who work for the public do not deserve to retire.
Literally take money out of your pocket and out of the community's pocket. And that was something, you know, I remember when we were fighting to defend the retirement system of Alabama against some of these same threats from some of these same kind of forces, frankly, because it was, you know, the billionaire John Arnold was behind some of these threats in Alabama to try to privatize the state pension system. And it was some of the same rhetoric about, you know, overpaid public employees and that kind of thing. But, you know, one of the issues we talked about was, do you not recognize the economic impact that for every $1 that is going to that retiree, the number of dollars that is circulating in our community?
7 times is what Brother Kimball said.
In terms
the
of his
iron
local
worker.
hire,
Yeah.
in terms of that local hire, right? And so it's going to be a similar type of multiplier for, you know, a state pension, any kind of public pension. And so, you know, to brag about trying to take money out of the pockets of elderly folks who have been working their whole lives, it is, you know, it is a moment of class warfare. I remember you had Jim Cramer on here a couple weeks ago, who was really pissed that Sean Fain was apparently preaching class warfare. But I mean, is this not class warfare?
Right.
to brag about taking money out of the pensions of retired state workers? Come on now.
Yeah. You know, and Alex, you mentioned this in the chat, and I appreciate that because I wanted to mention this. Something tells me that Glenn Beck is likely already seeing it, that being his Social Security. Remember in that clip, he said, I'm never going to see Social Security. I'm never going to see it. Every month around the 1st, or will very soon be at the minimum. And you're right. This guy is 59 years old, okay? So when he
Social
says...
Security's there for him.
When he says, I'm never going to see Social Security, he is actually lying to you. Maybe he believes this about Social Security destroying the pension systems because he just doesn't read anything ever and has no idea about how the world works. I will give him that benefit of the doubt. Let's say that. Let's just say that he is so misinformed and stupid that he believes that Social Security destroyed the pension system in 1935. Okay? Let's just pretend that we believe that. At 59 years old, having been in politics his entire life, when he says, I'm never going to see Social Security, he is lying.
He thinks that it won't be there, and he will literally be eligible in, 3 years if he wants to take at least some of it out?
Yeah. No, he does. There's no way that he actually believes.
Come on now.
There's no way he believes what he just said.
It's all going to disappear within the next 3 to 5 to 7 years.
What a lying. A ghoul. A lying ghoul.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway. I spent longer on that than I wanted to, but it's just so infuriating. But anyway, we have in the Zoom Cedric, right?
Let me double check. Let's see. Yes, we do.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, so Cedric Wilson is president of BCTGM Local 390G. BCTGM stands for the Bakery, Confectionery, Tobacco Workers, and Grain Millers International Union. They have been on strike now for months at IFF in Memphis. Cedric, brother, I appreciate your time this morning, and I appreciate your patience as we ran over on that last segment.
Jacob got on a roll. Sorry about that.
Go get him. No problem.
Yeah. So, start off. Can you tell us what you and your members do over at IFF in Memphis?
So basically, what we do is we extract soy protein isolate, and it's used in various products such as Infamil, that's the big one, Ensure, a lot of dog food, Purina, Royal Canine, Cliff Bars, Kind Bars, Herbalife, protein powder. We extract the protein out of the soybean, and we sell that as an ingredient.
Okay, and so are y'all like kind of in a traditional like factory setting? Like, are y'all on an assembly line?
No, it's a manufacturer. It's production based.
Okay, I see. And so, when did y'all go on strike?
It'll be 3 months next week.
3 months next week. And what are the issues? Where are y'all apart?
So really, we haven't even gotten to some of the things that we're asking for. Most of it is about the things that they're just trying to take away without even getting anything back. Like, I saw you on your clip talk about the overtime after 8. They're just trying to take it away without even offering anything in return. One of the things that they want to do is give us a 30-day notice on all of our health benefits. They want to be able to add or take away at any point in time as long as they give us a 30-day notice. They want to take away paid breaks. So those 3 things are like the main things. It's just really just stopping them from taking things away from us.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that is just so insulting to offer those kind of concessions in this economy when it's hard to.
And also they've only offered 4% for the first year. At the end of the negotiations. So.
Well, did they?
Nothing back.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that I'm being fair to the company here. Did they offer you 4% in the first year because they gave you raises to match inflation for every year before this?
No, we got. As a matter of fact, I take it a step further. During the entire pandemic, of course, we were essential workers. We got $500 in the cup.
Wow.
So no wages.
Wow.
And we've actually been under negotiations for over a year now. We finally chose to just not extend the contract, and decide to go on strike. So it's like, hey, we're going to go on strike if you guys don't negotiate fairly.
Right. And so, I mean, that is really, really wild stuff to have gone through the pandemic without raises. I mean, at one point inflation was up to 10%, and it's been, between kind of 5 and 10% almost the whole time. So, I mean, you're talking 3 years ago, a 15% pay cut at least. And they're only offering you a 4% raise in the first year, and then presumably lower raises in the next 2 years. Is it a 3-year contract that y'all are negotiating?
Well, that's open. That's open to whatever. We've made 1-year offers. We've made 3-year offers. We've even had 5-year offers. It just all depends on what those wages would be.
Right.
Right now, I think one of the main things right now is that we've had a decrease in orders, so they're trying to use that as leverage to lowball us, but they're expecting things to get better in the 3rd and 4th quarter. So.
Right. Yeah, of course. And so is that the primary reason that they are that they're saying no, we can't do this, is just because like right now in this 1 quarter? I mean, presumably they did well over the pandemic, right?
Oh, the pandemic was some of the best years we've ever had. Actually, no, they haven't said that at all, because they don't want us to see the books. If you're in a negotiation, they say, hey, we can't afford this. They got to prove it, right? We are actually still making a lot of profit. It's just that we're arguing about the fact that profits went down just a little bit. They're still profiting $11 billion as a company. They're still a $1 billion company. Yes.
Okay. So they made $11 billion in profits last year.
Yes.
Wow.
Now I think that's in sales, not profit. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
I mean,
that's a lot.
Yeah, this is obviously a very, very big company in terms of its sales. I mean, to be able to put out those kind of numbers, and I'm curious, what's going on in terms of why they don't want to negotiate in good faith and just try to work out a fair contract. I mean, y'all been working at this for a year now. I mean, is there any explanation beyond them just being, stubborn, I guess?
I got a few theories of my own. I think one of the things, though, is this is the first time we strike in 50 years. And they didn't believe that we would do it, right?
Wow.
So, I would say personally 5 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to do this. So we've had a lot of turnover over the years, especially during the pandemic. So we got a lot of younger and more progressive employees that kind of see the bigger picture. So, and that's not to knock some of the older employees we have. We got a lot of those guys out here too. We have about 200 employees in all. About 20 of them quit during all this, and 140 of us are on strike. So.
Right. Okay. I mean, that's really, I think that's impressive, and that's a testimony to the solidarity that y'all have built, inside the local to be able to look out for one another. I guess first be willing to take on this fight and be willing to walk out, and then to, stick together like that, I think is really impressive, and really admire what y'all are doing. And, I'm also curious, kind of what folks can do to support y'all from afar. I'm sure if, you're local in the Memphis area, there's probably more you can do, but, whether it's local or people outside the area, what can we do to kind of support y'all and lift up this struggle?
Well, I do have a GoFundMe account. I can send that information to you. But locally, just bodies on the line, man. We out here. It's hot. It's 108 degrees out here right now.
Right.
So it's pretty hot. It's more of a presence type of thing. We haven't really been getting the media, and that's kind of why I reached out to you. When I saw your video, we haven't really been getting the coverage that I think we need, because we don't really have a name per se to stick to it. Nobody knows IFF. They recently bought us from DuPont, so DuPont's not really a part of us anymore. We don't have that popular GM or UAW or things like that. You don't think about soy protein isolate when you think about some of these products, right?
Right,
so,
but it's an important. It's so important in so many products that we buy. I mean, and it wouldn't happen without y'all, without your work that y'all do every day. And so, I mean, to come to y'all asking for concessions in 2023 with inflation, with the difficulty in recruiting and retaining workers, I mean, that is just it's very insulting, and I think it's a shame that's even the position y'all are in. And definitely sending all my love and solidarity to y'all.
Yeah, and do send us that link. But in the meantime, for folks listening, if you Google BCTGM IFF GoFundMe strike, it's the first thing that pops up. Support IFF Memphis, formerly DuPont, workers strike, and they could use a lot of help. They've only been able to raise right now almost $900.
Yeah, we can get that.
Well, we've got more. We had to redo it, so we've actually gotten a lot more support locally. But,
okay, that's awesome.
I don't want to give you that impression, but I just had to create a new account. So.
Yeah, understood, and that's great to hear. And I mean, that's anything that folks can do. I think supporting strike funds is one of the the most important things that we can all do as members of this labor movement, even if it's just a couple bucks here and there, whatever you got. And I think it also just sends a message of solidarity, because the issues these workers are fighting for is relevant to all of us. None of us want to deal with concessions right now in this economy. None of us want to lose paid breaks in this economy. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So really appreciate y'all's fight.
Yeah. And Cedric, I asked if there were any stories, kind of like, we've been talking about the UAW stuff, and we've seen their executives just really kind of, being like belligerent in the press, wearing gaudy outfits, $30,000 watches, and really being kind of out of touch. Have you seen any behavior kind of in that vein, like being out of touch from the executives of IFF?
I can actually tell you a really good one that happened while we were out here. So we had a lady who works in our lab. Her husband recently died, and she actually called the HR, our HR manager, to ask about her life insurance policy, which she's still entitled to, right? And she told her, well, if you didn't strike, you wouldn't have had this problem.
Wow.
Just cold. And the thing is, you would think that, you want people to cross over, right? So you treat them nicely to see if they'll cross over, but she was just completely cold to it.
Wow.
And we actually have board charges on that right now because, sounds like threat of reprisal to me.
Right. That is just so disturbing. I mean, to even take it to that level.
Wow. Their husband died.
Yeah.
And
he died while we were on strike. Yeah. And, it's sad, and she's been one of our strongest people. I give my heart to her, and I hope y'all keep her in the prayers. So.
Absolutely.
And has she been able to get access to that life insurance account yet?
Yes, she has. And that's the thing. She was wrong, so you were cold to her and you were wrong about it. So it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that is a real shame and definitely I think indicative of sort of the way they've approached y'all in terms of not being willing to even sit down in good faith and then to treat employees that way. It's a real shame, and so I hope to see your struggle get more attention, and I hope to see more support and hopefully particularly folks in the Memphis area, y'all show up for these folks, these brothers and sisters out here fighting just for a better lives for themselves and their family.
Yep. Cedric Wilson, president of BCTGM Local 390. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience before we let you go?
Yeah, I watch. I keep up with a lot of the things that's going on around the country too. I just kind of want to get out there. It's not a coincidence that all of these people, all these places are going on strike at the same time. These companies are working together. Me personally, and it's just my personal opinion. I think what's happening here is that these guys are really trying to just set the market, because when you're in negotiations, that's what you hear all the time: market value, market value, market value. But it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter about the market value or something. If you made a lot of money, you should take care of your workers. It's really that simple. And we're not asking for much. We're not breaking the bank. We actually where we're ending right now, we're still open to move down from it. It's just that we haven't gotten any moving from their side. So
right.
At this point, they're just trying to make us negotiate our time and our lives, so it's like, I'm not doing that.
Right. Absolutely.
You're exactly right. There's a class war. The people that own these companies are I think literally in a sense waging war on the people that actually create value in this society.
And trying to chip away at all different angles, whether it's at our pay or whether it's in our time, in our healthcare benefits or retirement benefits, or wherever the struggle is taking place. It's and I think the solidarity is so important in that sense, being able to stick up for each other and to organize and fight together to withhold, to stand strong against these kind of attacks. So definitely just lifting up the struggle for sure, and wishing y'all all the best. And definitely I'm curious about this company, IFF, and I'm going to be looking into them a little bit more. And Jacob, maybe we can come up with some stuff to talk about with IFF. It sounds like they're an interesting company, that's for sure.
Well, I can tell you, I think we are having an effect, because their stocks are dropping pretty bad. I kind of been looking at what's going on with them, and they bought us out a couple of years ago from DuPont, and I think they were already kind of on the way down when they bought us, and I think we were supposed to be the savior. And that's what I personally think about that, because you look at all the articles online about why their stocks are falling. It's because of product availability, and I think the word they used was management credibility.
Wow.
Things like that. So, I think we're having an effect. Whether we believe it or not.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate your time, brother. Thank you.
I appreciate you having.
Yes, sir. Yeah, best of luck in your struggle, and definitely want to lift that up, because, and I think he's right. It's true that these fights are just happening all over the country, and it's important that working people stand together, and all these fights are connected in their own different ways. This is something that's going to affect the entire Memphis community. I mean, well over 100 jobs, right? I mean, to think that well over 100 people could lose a paid break, that's ridiculous. Paid breaks are important victory that they won and they fought for and they organized for. So it's interesting, they had been on strike in over 50 years, and so it finally got to that point. And this is another area where we've seen companies in a way that seems much worse than it used to be. I don't know if I don't have the data to quantify it, but it seems like companies are more likely to just bargain in bad faith now and to just intentionally not negotiate, whether it's a first contract, like in the Starbucks situation, or, think about Warrior Met and their approach, our IFF here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. There's somebody in the chat that is really trolling, and I never delete any comments or anything like that, but I kicked this person off the stream. So.
Oh, okay. Well, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah. Anyway, so and so this is what unions are fighting for across the country. They're fighting for things like being able to retire with dignity. They're fighting to be able to have dignity at work and have good pay and stuff like this. And that is threatening to the companies and the politicians that they buy. And so they don't like it. They don't like workers having some sort of autonomy or some sort of power. And this wasn't at the Republican presidential debate, but it did come out at a forum that Nikki Haley was at last week. And it was regarding economic development in North Carolina. And so listen to what she said about her approach to economic development.
But the other thing that we did that was really important was I didn't want any company to come to South Carolina if they were unionized. I would not. We never wanted a unionized company. I didn't want them to taint our water at all.
Wow. We didn't want anyone in South Carolina to get the wrong idea that they could join together and actually have better wages and benefits. Wow. Yeah, that's pretty absurd. Not often that they're that explicit with it.
Right.
But it is certainly the approach. And, that's kind of been a theme of the show today, talking about economic development and how, the bosses and politicians here in the South in particular, that's what they're selling, right, is a hostility to unions, low wages, lesser educated workforce that has less options with lower expectations.
Right.
Regulations that are lax or absent, regulators that are non-existent or bought and paid for.
Yeah.
That's what they're promoting as a quote-unquote business-friendly climate, right, that they need for economic development, so to speak. When it's a shame, because there's so many ways to have economic development that actually comes from the side of labor and supporting the people, right? Because what they promote is this economic development from the side of capital, but when we have economic development from the side of labor, we are supporting the people. We, the people, the majority, the vast majority that are working class, you know, the most diverse class of people. And, you know, there's just so many ways, whether it's prevailing wage, the project labor agreements, and those kind of issues we talked about earlier with the building trades, or whether it's retirement pensions, you know, this paid leave, all these different ways in which we can do economic development that actually supports people and improves their lives. And, you know, it's a disgrace. It's really a disgrace.
Absolutely a disgrace. She said this at The Gathering, which was a conference co-hosted by syndicated conservative talk radio host Eric Erickson and hardworking Americans. Not actual hardworking Americans, but that is the name of a political action committee founded by non-union construction boss Brian Kemp. Every serious Republican presidential contender not named Donald Trump is scheduled to speak at the event in Atlanta. And so this is from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And so, yeah, really, and so, you know, that's the audience that she was speaking to. And it's just so, I mean, really, really, I mean, it's amazing how they're, you know, they are so hostile to workers having any sort of power in this economy that they don't, you know, they don't want any sort of, you know, worker power to taint their waters. Yeah, pretty gross stuff.
Taint their waters. Wow. We wouldn't want to be polluted with all those highfalutin ideas like defined benefit and a paid lunch break.
Yep.
Or a mandatory water break, God forbid.
Yep. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857. We're going to do one more segment talking about the UAW, and we'll probably might take one call.
Well, I had quite a few things I was going to rant and rave about, but now see it's 12:21, so you know, in the interest of time, we'll keep it short.
Yeah. So the UAW strike authorization vote is obviously that's the kind of the big labor news this week, and that is that the 150,000 Big Three auto worker UAW members voted 97% to authorize a strike. That was announced by the UAW International Union by President Shawn Fain yesterday morning in a live stream. And so let's listen to him make that announcement.
All right, well, we've got a couple clips here from Shawn Fain. I want to make sure I get the right one. Hopefully I do here.
That all of us are fed up with the Big Three's race to the bottom. We're fed up with seeing Big Three profits break the bank.
I don't think that's the right one.
While we're breaking our backs.
I thought I had it titled Announcement.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Let me see if I can find that. Sorry about that, y'all.
Oh, no worries.
Right. I don't know that this is the right one either.
I've been talking a lot, you know, about a 32-hour work week, 40-hour work week.
Yeah, so I'm not sure.
I'm not sure that you. I don't know that I see this one. I see Ford CEO. I see GM exec. Work week. Shawn Fain. Why Shawn Fain?
Okay. Yeah. Well, so he announced, you know, that 97% voted in favor, and we can go back to that first clip that you played, where he talks about why his members voted 97% to authorize a strike.
Yeah, that's big.
That all of us are fed up with the Big Three's race to the bottom. We're fed up with seeing Big Three profits break the bank while we're breaking our backs. We're fed up with Big Three CEOs getting double-digit pay increases while our pay continues to go backwards. We're fed up with plant closures, tears, and corporate greed. Recently, one of the Big Three executives dismissed our bargaining demands by saying that we need to focus on reality and that we need to work together. So let's talk about reality. The reality is that the Big Three made a combined $21 billion in profits in just the first 6 months of this year. That's on top of the $250 billion in North American profits they made over the last decade. The reality is the Big Three have closed or spun off 65 plants over the last 20 years. So try telling workers at Belvedere Assembly, Lordstown Assembly, GM's Powertrain in Warren, Ford's Romeo Engine Plant, Trenton Engine Plant, Marysville Axle, Mount Elliott Tool and Die, Toledo Machining Plant. Tell them all how working together has worked out for them. Try telling our retirees who haven't seen an increase by 1 cent over the last 17 years while inflation has skyrocketed how well working together has worked for them. Our retirees have went backwards. Tell all the temps that are living paycheck to paycheck, scraping to get by, while they're working 7 days a week for 12 hours a day in some places, with no commitment to their future, how working together works for them. Better yet, ask Sarah Chambers, a single mother who started at Ford as a temporary worker and had to work for 16 years before reaching top pay. Tell her what it's like to work together with management. Right now, a majority of the Big Three employees are second-class workers with no pensions and no post-retirement health care. So how's that working together? Are we working together when our wages have regressed over the last 10 years? Inflation's been hammering us. We see it in the price of bread, in the cost of milk. And here's the simple truth that every real unionist knows in the depths of their soul. We're working together, and when we're working together with management, it doesn't work. That's why contract talks are called collective bargaining, not working together. We've sat by for decades while these companies continue to just take and take from us. They took our union's hard-won pensions. They took our retiree health care. They've taken our wages. They take our mental and physical health. I just talked to someone this morning who's talking about his daughter working in a plant and has had carpal tunnel on both hands. So, this is our time to take back what we're owed. Working together with the companies doesn't work for us.
And so there you go. I mean, a really powerful message there about rebutting exactly to what the complaints about going on strike are going to be. There's going to be all sorts of people in the media. Why don't you just work together? Why are you so combative to your company? Why are you so antagonistic towards the company, the poor company? Why don't you just work together? And that is what working together gets you. It gets you disrespect, less wages, worse working conditions, not being able to retire with dignity. Unfortunately, and I know that this is something that is near and dear to a longtime listener of the show, Joe Marshall. This was a big fight that he had with the paper companies back in the 80s about teams and redesign and labor management partnerships. It's all when it's coming from management and it doesn't come along with a stake in the company, then it's not worth the paper that it's written on or not written on. Probably sent out in an email today, some of these plans.
Yeah, well, I think, working together on whose terms and to what end.
Yep.
Is what's important. I mean, if management wants to work together to recruit and retain employees by paying them what they're worth, hey, I'm sure, President Shawn Fain is happy to work with them on that.
Right.
If they want to work together on ending this, travesty that is 2 tiers, I'm sure he's happy to work together on that, I'm sure.
Right.
So working together, but on whose terms and to what end is what is relevant. And because I dealt with that, in my career as a staff organizer, at what point do you push too much? what times do you work together? What times is it combative? And there's not always easy answers for that. But, when the other side is not operating in good faith, or when you see, just as in this case, the massive profits that they have reaped. I mean, just massive profits. And the idea that a little bit of dignity and respect for these workers is too much to ask. I mean, come on now. There are no cars without the workers. There are no profits without the workers there, right? And the workers are giving so much of themselves, their lives, their time, their minds and bodies, and producing these wonderful profits. And so, it's not a lot to ask.
And so while, the UAW negotiating team is working really day and night on this kind of stuff, while UAW members are working day and night creating the vehicles, I mean, we're going to hear this in a clip here in a moment. Shawn Fain talks about one of the plants being in critical status right now, which is something that amazingly allows the company to just declare and have 90 days where their employees work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. Okay, so there's
that ought not be legal.
Yeah, ought not be legal is absolutely right. But there's a plant here in the United States that is union 7 days a week, 12 hours a day right now for 90 days. And so that's what the union, that's what these union members and their officers are doing this week. Why don't we take a look at what the Ford CEO is doing?
What do you do? Yeah. That's awesome.
I'm the CEO. No, I'm the CEO. I'm Jim Farley. I'm on a road trip.
You're actually the CEO?
Yeah.
What are you doing out here?
I'm going through a 1,000-mile road trip.
I'm on a 1,000-mile road trip in my $80,000 car. While I have employees, I don't think it's a Ford plant. Maybe it's a GM plant. But while there are auto workers working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, while the UAW is bargaining with other members of my executive team day and night, into the night, over the weekend, I'm on a road trip. So out of touch. And the General Motors had an executive give an update on the negotiations where he assures us that, despite our eyes showing us, what the executives are doing, us seeing the Ford CEO taking a 1,000-mile road trip in an $80,000 vehicle, despite seeing the Stellantis COO being in his multi-million-dollar Mexican mansion. This GM executive, the Vice President of Global Manufacturing and Sustainability, this sounds like a stand-up guy here. He tells us that they're taking it very seriously.
Hey, Team GM. Gerald Johnson here. I want to give you a brief update on where we're at with negotiations. First of all, I'm standing here in Wentzville Assembly Plant, just finished a great walk around. Kudos to the Wentzville team for their launch performance on the new Colorado and Canyon. As it pertains to negotiations, the subcommittees are working hard. As recent as this weekend, they've been in there working through the weekend in order to come to solutions necessary to move forward with our agreement. I can also tell you that everyone's taking this very seriously.
Everybody's taking it very seriously. Just take our word for it. Don't actually look at anything that we're doing. Just take my word for it. I'm saying it, and that makes it true. Really gross stuff. But in Shawn Fain's announcement of the strike authorization vote, he really dug in to his members' demands for a shorter work week, which I think is really, really amazing that we've got a union leader out here pushing the envelope on this issue. And he speaks really eloquently to why this is so important for his members and for the American working class. Let's listen to that.
I've been talking a lot, about a 32-hour work week, 40-hour work week for 32 hours that we work, 40 hours pay. And it's been wild to watch the talking heads on television that continue to have a meltdown over this discussion. You know, right now, Stellantis has put its plants on critical status, forcing our members to work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day in many cases, week after week for 90 straight days. That's not a life. Critical status, you know, it's named right because working that much can put anyone in critical condition. It's terrible for our bodies, it's terrible for our mental health, and it's terrible for our family life. We miss critical moments in the lives of our children, critical moments like Little League games and birthday parties. We are one of the most overworked countries in the world. You look at the average number of hours spent working over a year. The average worker in Japan gets a month more free time than the average worker in the United States. Workers in France have 2 months more than free time than we have. And top it all off, workers in Germany have 3 months more free time than workers in the United States have. So just imagine how much your life would improve if you received the same pay and benefits you have now, but you work 12 weeks less to earn it. Right here in our own country, the talking heads have lost their shit every time I talk about the 32-hour work week. But you know what? They and their coworkers were working from home all throughout the pandemic. And I recently read an interesting study by Deloitte that said most workers in the financial industry are either working from home or coming into the office only a couple days a week. And this study found that 66% of those workers would quit their job if their employers made them come to work at the office 5 days a week. And you wonder why that is. Because they found out during that time that all that extra time at home improved their relationships with their children by 70-some%. It improved their relationships with their spouses and partners over 60-some%. With every relationship category in their life, because they were able to work home more and spend more time at home with family and friends, every relationship category they looked at, it improved over 50%. So it turns out people are happier when they spend less time at work, not more. And you know what? I've heard many of these people, the pundits, want to say, yeah, well, these people have an education. Well, UAW family, you know what I say when they say that to me? I call bullshit. Many of our members not only have college educations, but during the pandemic, we were deemed essential. Our members risked their health and safety to keep the lines running during COVID. Some of our members even gave their lives. So now we continue to risk our health and safety, our mental health, our relationships, and all that by being overworked and underpaid. So here's my question to all of you. Isn't our time just as valuable as the time of the white-collar workers? Aren't our families just as important as the families of company executives? Isn't our own health just as valuable as that of the talking heads on television? You know, UAW family, our demands and our fight are about more than just us. They're about the double standards in our society.
So there you go. That is, that's a really powerful message about why, workers deserve a shorter work week.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I so agree with you, and I agree with everything President Fain said. We'll see what happens with these negotiations, and there's a lot left to be shaking out right now, but I think it's going to be interesting to see. But I really appreciate, him putting forward this demand and talking about this issue in the way he's talking about it, because we have to reclaim our time.
Yep.
We have to reclaim our time, like in so many different industries, so many different professions. It doesn't matter what profession or industry you're in. It seems like we just continually have an assault on our time, and we've got to reclaim it. And so that's really huge. And, the labor movement fought to get us the 40-hour week. The labor movement fought for the 30-hour week, and we came pretty close to getting it, is my understanding. But it's time to reclaim that fight, I think, and so I really like to see that.
Yep, absolutely. Really great stuff. And not only the way that he's talking about it for UAW members, but being able to connect it to the broader working class and these broader working class struggles. You know, he mentioned his solidarity with and the UAW solidarity with the SAG-AFTRA and the writers, and that's really powerful. And you know, it's really, really good stuff to see this, and you know, because management is not taking it seriously, despite, you know, their claims that they are. It is, you know, it's looking more and more likely that we're going to see a strike after September 14th. So we're going to keep our eyes on this, obviously, and September 14th is the deadline, not a reference point, and like I said, we're going to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, just sending all the solidarity to the UAW, wishing them much success in this fight. It's important. Just like the Teamsters fight, I think has important ramifications on the broader working class. I think this one does too. And, it, you know, I think there is a militant upsurge in terms of the working class in this country, and I hope it just produces more and more wins for working people.
Yeah. And so that's going to wrap it up for this week. We'll be back next week, and we've got I'm excited about this interview by Blair L.M. Kelly. We are going to be talking to Blair L.M. Kelly about her book, Black Folk, The Roots of the Black Working Class. I think that's going to be a good interview, and not least because Robin D.G. Kelly was one of the people who wrote an endorsement of the book on the book's blurb on the back. So I have a lot of respect for Robin Kelly. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation. We're also going to be talking to Sean Orr from the Teamsters about contract enforcement. And, you know, now that the Teamsters, UPS Teamsters have ratified the contract, the thing turns, the campaign now turns to how do you enforce it? Because, you know, whether you think it was enough or not, you know, kind of the vote is done now, and and now we have to, you know, the goal for the UPS Teamsters has to be, we have to make sure that we take everything from this company that is ordered in the contract. We can't let them get away with anything. And so there's a lot of work to be done there. And so we're going to talk to Sean Orr about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's an opportunity to build your strength and to, again, win for workers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a good show, I think, and appreciate everybody tuning in. Like the stream before you head out if you haven't yet. Subscribe if you haven't. Donate to us if you have the means, tvlr.fm/donate. You can send a one-time donation, or you can make a monthly recurring donation of any amount. Any amount would help. And buy tickets to our live show, September 17th, Sunday, September 17th, 6 p.m. at Shenanigans Comedy Theater in Huntsville off Lehman Ferry. Seats are very limited, 40, so you're going to want to go ahead and get your seats here soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're going to enjoy it. I think it's going to be a great opportunity just to get together and talk and have a good night. Also, I did want to plug the UAH Human Rights Film Festival one more time. That is coming up September 12th through 14th, I believe, is what we said. Let me just confirm that. But I did want to plug that again. I think that's going to be really cool. I like that that's happening here in Huntsville. It's neat to see stuff like that going on in our community. So definitely wanted to highlight that. And also wanted to mention that Cover Alabama is going to be launching a week of action around Medicaid expansion here soon, leading into Labor Day. So definitely stay tuned. If you're not already following Cover Alabama on social media, please do that. For those of you who are listening and you live in Alabama, your help is requested in contacting Governor Ivey regarding Medicaid expansion. We have waited far too long for this policy. It is a no-brainer policy. I won't get on my soapbox about it, but, you know, it's time to do it. So I just wanted to go ahead and put that out there.
Yep. All right. See y'all next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye, y'all.